If we could all stand for the pledge, please. We rise. Kim, are you all set with roll call?
Yes, I am.
Resolved that the Board of Education approve the agenda for the October 3rd, 2022 regular Board of Education meeting. Can I have a motion, please?
Second.
Tony first, Tanya second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 6-0. And we're going to move on to the Board of Education spotlight. So I'll hand this part of the meeting over to Superintendent Thompson.
Good evening, everyone. The Board of Education will recognize and honor members of the Bees Band and the Baker's News. Members of the Bees Band teamed up with the Baker Film and Baker News students to create a Master of Puppets tribute to the band Metallica and the Netflix series Stranger Things. The video was released on YouTube in August. We're honored and excited we are excited to honor the work of these talented students by featuring this video tonight as our Board of Education spotlight. Great work, Bees. And before we show the video, I do have a couple of highlights that I would like to share. Couple of the top talking points. Many of the members of our Bees Band are currently hard at work during the marching band season. The Baldwinsville Band took first place on Saturday at the West Genesee Home Show, which was held at ESM. The Marching Bees scored their highest score of the season on Saturday, and they're gearing up for the New York State Field Band Conference 2022 Championships on Sunday, October 30th at the Dome. Baker News students are headed to the All-American High School Film Festival later this month after being named the official selection on the broadcast TV highlight category. The festival will be held at AMC Theaters in Times Square on October 22nd through the 23rd. This is the second consecutive year that Baker News has been honored, taking first place in this category in 2021. This Master of Puppets tribute video will be submitted to various film festivals in 2023 for regional and national competitions. Congratulations to both groups.
In all of my assignments, I love to use Grammarly because I am able to save so much time, and I'm able
when we say, okay, it's time to log on the property, they get excited about it.
Well, that was pretty good. I like how all the different groups are working together to do something that creative. For sure, the collaboration amongst all those different groups to produce something like that's amazing. Great opportunity for all of our students.
I just wanted to share, I experienced my first marching band experience. Baldwinsville hosted all those districts, and it was pretty cool, even though I think I was sitting with all the visiting teams. So I'm grateful to the Greece Central School District in Liverpool for walking me through everything, and I really at times couldn't keep my eyes open because they were throwing stuff up in the air and it was making me nervous, and it was so exciting. I had so much fun. My daughter was totally hypnotized, and she now knows what she wants to do, and I'm just so grateful, and just the energy, the camaraderie, the celebration of each other in that space was really remarkable. So thank you. It was great.
Moving on to the next part of the agenda is the correspondence, board activities, and committee reports. And Tanya got a little ahead of us on that. Nope, that's okay, because it connected, it was good. Let's see, on Thursday, September 22nd, we had a wellness committee meeting. I'm not sure if anyone's ready to present. I know Shelley's on that committee, and I am. Sam and Wayne. Shelley's not with us. Do either of you have anything you want to start with? I have plenty of notes, but I can fill in. We can do tag team it here.
We start the wellness policy was started to be reviewed tonight, and Kristen sent us out an update on what they plan to do for this year. She introduced Donna Rice, the new food service person, and she's very excited to be working here. She comes from Marcellus. And she wanted to implement a few programs such as New York Thursdays, and she is looking forward to working with the district.
Yep, that was an interesting program. It's the farm to table program, and utilizing the produce from our local farmers for the menu, which is a great idea. To piggyback on what Sam said, we talked about the goals, which came from, well, the wellness policy, but the goals for the year, and those being assess the wellness policy implementation, which Sam was talking about in each of the buildings. And we have that wellness grant from the county health department for, is it McNamara, Reynolds, and Ray? Or is it, what? Yep. At Reynolds, the indoor, okay, I'm just gonna go down my notes. We're assessing the wellness policy. Ray's considering outdoor trail. We're getting help with the county health department for that. They've already done an indoor trail, work fitness trail inside the school at Reynolds with the PE teacher there. And another goal is the wellness activities and ideas for the classroom, compile different ideas for like healthy eating ideas for different celebrations in the schools. And then the third goal is providing wellness and mindful information activities for the staff, which comes when they send out a survey every year of how our staff is doing, because it's kind of like they always say about moms, if moms aren't taking care of themselves, they can't take care of the children. Same thing, if our teachers aren't taking care of themselves, it's difficult for them to focus on our students. And they do an inquiry, and three major things that come back is nutrition, stress, and exercise, and what's the best way to get that information to our staff for self-help. And they prefer to have that provided to them in a professional development day type of way, and also through the newsletter, which Kristen works really hard to put together about 3 times a year.
Review of the WellStar, discuss what it does and what how it's gonna affect our district, to give us data to make improvements going forward.
And then also, her presentation slides, which covers a lot of this, is on board docs for that committee. So you can see more details of this with some links to get more of the information. Especially was the smart snack calculator and stuff to help teachers bring the healthy snacks and options into the classroom.
And the Fitness 30, or the Mindful 30 days. Yes, 30 days of mindfulness.
And I have my card, one day at a time, one breath at a time. Stop, take a breath, observe your thoughts, and proceed with clarity, which I'm working on.
I have a bunch of those cards if anybody wants one that Jen was just talking about. There's two, I guess, positive quotes on there for you to look to help you through the day. The last thing that I have notes-wise is neuroplasticity, to focus on what you focus on becomes your reality, so focus on good.
And there is a link to that video, and it was very good. Thank you, Wayne. On September 23rd, Jeff and I attended the Board Officers Academy out in Rochester. Jeff, did you want to say anything about that? Or we can, same thing, fill in the gaps with each other.
I think overall, I mean, it's a good thing to attend for reminders of, expectations of board officers, boards. But the best part for those, for me, is interacting with our colleagues from other districts. I think that's where I get the most bang for the buck at those. And I was able to sit at a table with, even school districts I never even heard of, other than Skaneateles. So it was a good mix at my table. And in fact, finding out that we are actually doing some good practices here, because things like having board members attend, the way we round robin through the board members to attend agenda planning, and then a few other things like having a printed agenda that we approve in July about when certain topics are going to be discussed at board meetings. So like things like that, they're like, oh, can you send us a copy of those things? So I was pinging a few people to send them to me live there, and then I forwarded them on, and just to be able to kind of lead the discussion and not be behind on that was kind of nice. That at least made me feel like we're doing some good things. But the interaction with the board members, I think, is the best thing about those trainings.
There are some, major areas, rules and responsibilities, as Jeff just talked about, and how it's our responsibility to do things like educating the community on what our role and responsibility is. And they brought up some ideas of that. And one of them we talked about when Superintendent Thompson joined us was, having a little brochure that can also be linked to the website about what our responsibilities are, so people know where that boundary is between us and what the district responsibility is. Talked about, the challenging part for board officers is running a meeting, facilitating the meeting, and actually being able to participate in the meeting as well, because we have a voice and the challenges that go along with that. But, common topics that we've talked about here, board goals, how important orientation is to onboard new people, the stability of leadership, succession plans for leadership, so there's no gaps, and, educating and providing information to board members so we can make informed decisions when we actually vote. Another major section is running an effective board meeting and how it's an art. One thing they talked about was the public comment period, and I'd say that we do a really good job in all the recommendations that they have for boards. And just the courtesy thing of planning ahead that we talked about, and sending questions ahead of time so we can get as many questions answered with what's on the agenda, and so our administrators and their staff are prepared to answer those. And the big thing that we probably need to improve upon is, following up with meetings. How effective are we? And it's interesting because that email I sent out to you guys with the checklist of how we can rate ourselves after a board meeting, they actually shot up on the screen as a way to make us more effective and efficient when we come together, so we don't have lengthy meetings, as Azan and I were just talking about prior to this meeting. And another segment was on developing and maintaining a positive relationship with the superintendent. The quote they used was from Waters and Marzano, which is the exact quote that our consulting firm, when we were looking for a superintendent, had. The length of a superintendent's tenure has a positive effect on student achievement. They talked about the 6 major pillars between the president and the superintendent, and all the good things there's 6 pillars, and there is a diagram. I sent you guys the slide presentation. And then they put on their little blotches of all the things that could go wrong to knock those pillars down where we're not moving together as a team. They did ask the 2 superintendents in the room what was the most important thing, important pillar, and they actually said asking questions, which I thought was really interesting because there were a lot of other important things there, but they felt that was important because our job is to help educate the community and ourselves, so we make the best decisions for the students. They did cover super board evaluations, and then the other part is building a unified Board of Education. Talked a lot about consensus, that I understand, I accept, support framework, what builds it, what could possibly block it, and the major things for disagreement are because people aren't hearing each other, different values and experiences and outside factors, and kind of working through that and making sure we always have a unity of purpose and know our why, for why we're here and what we're trying to achieve. But I'd say that I think this was the 3rd one I went to, and it was packed. I think it was more information, useful information, and things that I've been struggling with to help me be more effective and help all of us as a team move forward. So I really enjoyed this one this year.
I think just one more thing to add is, especially for our new board members, is you know, how we hold some things and how we set our agenda, you know, follows kind of how we do it, and it doesn't mean every school district does this at the same way. So things like the public speaking session, we do it, seems to work for us, but many other school districts, you know, some make you register 24 to 48 hours prior if you want to speak. Some do it at the end of the meeting, some do it. So there's no one answer, it's just kind of whatever works best for us. Another thing was we brought up the idea of the board roundtable at the end. You know, some do it at the beginning, some do it at the end, some don't do it at all. So it's, you know, it's really what works for us, so we can adjust those things as the board, you know, evolves, and if we think there's a better way. But I think just knowing that there's not one answer of how, you know, to do those things, and just got to find out what the board wants and what the board likes to do. So I think we have a good flow with ours, and having talked to other people, you know, I'm pretty happy with how we run ours.
And just one more follow-up on that. I think one of the things that my big takeaway with that was listening to all of the different school districts. You know, when we're here, I feel like we're like on an island dealing with some of these issues on our own, and it was, I don't want to say coming, because I mean there's a lot of challenges, and you don't want to see everyone have the same challenges we are, but there's that sense of, okay, we're not the only ones going through this, and what we're dealing with is, you know, considered normal in our area of responsibility and work. So that was, you know, interesting to hear the different stories and how they've navigated some of the challenges. So next on the agenda was the policy committee meeting, which we had prior to this meeting, and it was Tanya and myself tonight. So we have, Tanya, do you want to go or I can go? Okay. So going back to, we covered, we had a few policies come through from the audit committee, more about financial. You'll see all of these coming forward to the next board meeting, about travel expenses, more about using the GSA instead of itemizing receipts and the efficiencies in the business office with that. We also, it was the wellness committee that sent forward changes to the wellness policy, so it was reviewing that, and I should have kept these out.
And just as Jen is looking, just a lot of the review had to do with consistency of language and coherency, so there was a lot of work ensuring that there was consistency of specific language, and it was throughout the documents.
Another one was on district investments. We increased that for bank accounts. We already approved it at the reorg meeting. We just had to adjust that policy. We kind of did things a little out of order to make sure we were in compliance with that, but that needed to be done. We talked about the student removal policy. This is a required policy that was sent to us with recommendations from the special education department, but our legal team helping us with that. And we stopped with the staff use of computerized information resources. It was really great to get different perspectives, and I think some of us looked at that policy with a different lens, so we're going to take that back and review it and have hopefully our full policy committee here next time to go through that in a little more detail with the recommendations from the Farrar firm, which are similar recommendations that they've sent out to a lot of the school districts who have the same issues going on.
And just one more item, and in addition to coherence and consistency, also just ensuring that the language was also inclusive. So, for example, instead of families, we expanded it to families, caregivers, and guardians. So that's also something we reviewed as well.
Ask Joe, there's a lot of that going on because he spent a lot of time typing and looking over his shoulder at the screen. So hopefully we'll get through this next series and we'll have to do a lot of those adjustments to have that consistency throughout the manual. But we appreciate his work and help with that.
Before we move on, it's probably worth for those following along at home that we didn't skip the facility committee meeting. We're just going to cover that at the leadership report version. So just in case you were wondering.
Thank you, Jeff. You're supposed to nudge me. So what you're going to talk about is on the presentation from leadership. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So next up, we have Azan to present the student board report. Does anyone else have anything else they wanted to report out on? Okay. All right, Azan, you're up. Looking forward to it.
Well, good evening anyways. So there's kind of a lot this week because it's been a little while since there was last board meeting and school is definitely in session now. I guess to start, open house is kind of a big thing I know for teachers that they enjoy doing. I'm sure there's some teachers out there that enjoy doing open houses. Baker recently did their first open house since COVID hit, and I know hearing from some of my teachers there was a pretty large turnout. I also have some friends and there were some students that helped to run it. Students greeted parents throughout the building and helped them get around. Support time was introduced at the last board meeting that Baker was going to put into place, which basically, just as a refresher, is students might have study halls, but just because you have a study hall doesn't mean your teacher does. So students on Thursdays are now able to get a pass and go visit any teacher that they want to get extra help from. I've taken advantage of it both Thursdays that we've had it, and I'd say it's definitely helpful. There's a huge turnout, a lot of kids are going in. I mean, it's nice, like being a student like myself, I'm taking a lot of hard classes. A lot of us don't have time to, have a study hall and meet with our teachers, so it's just nice that everyone's on the same playing field there and we're all getting extra help. You guys already talked a lot about this, but the marching band home show happened. The turnout was fantastic. The performance that they put on was fantastic per usual. And I don't need to ramble too much there. I mean, they did well. They always do well. They're going to continue to do well. They have some things coming up pretty soon as well. It's hard to talk about all the sports, but I've attended a few of the football games, and there's been pretty large turnouts there as well. Homecoming will be this Friday, and Baker's also doing a wellness day on Friday, and then a no homework weekend is something that I know our administration has been looking into, and that's going to go into effect for the first time this weekend. Basically just so kids can get a bit of a wellness break and hopefully enjoy their long weekend rather than having to suffer through homework. Going along with that, our student council and then the individual class councils have helped to plan for a pep rally on Friday. I know the last one that we did, there was a lot of competition between classes. That's always a big thing. I know they're planning to do some they did like a pie eating contest one year. They did like a dance-off thing one year, so that should be pretty fun for the students. Up until this year, we did cross country. We recently hosted the 70th Baldwinsville Invitational. There's a ton of schools that come to the campus, a ton of kids that run all day long. It's just a huge event. Anyone that understands anything about cross country knows that the Beeville Invite is one of the bigger cross country invites that happens all year long. And then I'm obviously missing a lot of stuff about sports. I'm pretty sure girls sectionals tennis started tonight. There's just a lot of stuff to talk about with sports. But I guess just on a more personal note, we're 5 weeks in, which is kind of crazy being a senior. Like this Friday is going to be the 5 weeks. It's exciting and then also kind of scary at the same time to think that much time has already gone by. Student morale is pretty high this year. It seems like everyone's pretty happy to be back. School's set in, but it's not like, I know like a lot of my friends are not like dreading coming back to school the next day, which is kind of a change of events that's nice. But yeah, I suppose that was kind of all over the place, but there's been a lot going on, but I would say that we're on a pretty positive note overall. So, thank you.
I know we're 5 weeks in, but they're gonna have a really exciting weekend between Wellness Day and all the homecoming events. Thank you, Zan. Makes me want to go back. Okay, next up on the agenda is the public participation. Do we have any requests to speak? Okay, moving along to the consent agenda. Resolved that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda pursuant to the attached. Can I have a motion, please? Tony first.
Second?
Second, Tanya. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Passes 6-0. Next up on the agenda is a leadership report, so I'll hand this over to Superintendent Thompson to determine who's going first.
Thank you. Mr. Ewing. I'm just reading the order.
You are the lucky winner.
Thank you very much for having us, the Palmer team, with you this evening. We'd like to go through our strategic plan. Before we get there, we have three important members of the Palmer team, Ms. Kim Hodson, Mrs. Erica Furr, and Mrs. Heather Kowalski that will be participating in the presentation tonight as well. We have worked very hard at Palmer to develop the program. We met this summer to really talk about our strategic goals for this upcoming year. Some of the things, if you are a returning board member or have seen presentations in the past, you'll see there are pieces of the plan that have just been continuous and ongoing, and other pieces that have been added newly. So we want to start with our first goal, focused on achieving educational excellence and high levels of learning for all. And I won't read what's on the other slide, but really implementation of district initiated programs and protocols have really helped us to find some success at Palmer, along with an implemented writing strategy, the RACES writing strategy that we have focused on for the last couple of years. We're going to share some data here with you in just a minute, but if you flip to the next slide, this is really how we have helped students kind of crack the code with some of the writing that they have participated in. And I'm going to hand it over to Mrs. Kowalski to talk a little bit more about implementation.
So I teach third grade at Palmer. I've been in third grade since we've been using RACES. And it's really just giving kids a format to follow. So struggling writers or high achieving writers, that we all can follow the same system and have really that same language. So it's really been a tool that we've implemented K-5 in our building, and it has, I think kids have really shown success with it. For me, the nice piece is that kids start third grade and we're not starting off from zero, that we have all that same common language. So kids are starting the first day in third grade, they're able to restate questions, they're able to answer questions, and then when we start to write what they're thinking or being asked to read a response and write a response, that kids have that strategy already that they've been implementing since kindergarten. So it's really just given them a foundation to just grow on.
I was going to add to that as a first grade teacher. You might wonder how we implement RACES with kindergarten and first grade students. And really, it's all scaffolded. So in kindergarten, their focus is basically on restating the question. So it might be something as simple as sitting at a morning meeting and asking the children, what's your favorite fruit? And they have to restate, my favorite fruit is. So coming to first grade, we can already see when we sit down at a morning meeting, children are automatically doing that, coming to us, so that R is already in place. So in first grade, we kind of build on that, and we begin to talk about answering the question. Being able to restate and use words from the question, and then give your answer. And honestly, by the end of the year, we're already beginning to talk about looking for evidence for your answer. Like, how do you know that that's the answer? So it's been really, I think, beneficial. We've used, that restate and answer in our language almost every single day at the primary grades.
The next slide just shows gathering some information back from state assessments this year. We just put together this visual to kind of show how students have been successful. We get a gap report that basically shows, we looked specifically at the written responses, and this was the data that we collected. In many cases, these are averages, average gaps between the region and even within the district. We had situations and quite a few places where we were in the 25% gap range on average between the region, and some large gaps even within the district. So we're super proud of the work that students have done, and super proud of the work that teachers have done with students as well. So in ongoing work, we do meet as we will be re-implementing kind of PLC meetings. We've already enlisted the help of coaches, the district learning coaches, to be working with in-grade level teams, continually looking at student performance, what is best practice, and using that information to drive our instructional decision making. Our second goal is to promote collaboration, innovation, and flexibility to prepare students for their futures. Specifically, we have looked over the last couple years, we continue to look at the RTI model, that student support model, in creating more and more flexibility based upon exactly what students need, and ensuring that we're really looking closely at the needs of individual students in supporting them academically. Ms. Hodson will talk a little bit about the RTI model. This just talks about our focus on restructuring the RTI process. It was a very one-size-fits-all model. Students were going for support services 5 days a week, every student, 30 minutes a day, and we really started to recognize the fact that we had students that needed that model, but we also had students that could benefit from a little bit of a tune-up, so to speak, a couple days a week, 30 minutes, which then allowed them more time in their classroom to be engaged in classroom activities. So,
one of the big changes that we're focusing on this year is that we're transforming more into a push-in versus a pull-out model. So Heather, you've already had support pushed into your classroom, where we're becoming more of a part of a math workshop model, which is really cutting down on transition times. And even if they're not missing new tier 1 instruction, there's just things in the classroom, that's like their home base. So instead of removing them, we're pushing in to just be another support right there, providing them what they need. And we're reviewing the frequency and duration of their services. So as Mr. Yue mentioned, whether it's going to be every day for 30 minutes, or it might be Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, some are meeting for 15 minutes, it's just becoming more skill specific. We've created different screeners that we're using in addition to district benchmarking, and then teacher concerns and any history of support that they've had. We're also collecting the data, whether we're using Ames Web, STAR, we've started using the new CBM assessments that the district purchase license to, and then we're also using eDoctrina to really focus on the skills and make sure that that growth is happening, and changing services as appropriate from there.
we've also focused here at the beginning of the year, if you see at the bottom of the slide, it really talks about holding off on officials RTI services in K and 1 until January. Just utilizing our support staff to push into classrooms to really assess where students are. We found that there are some differences in the assessments that students take at the end of kindergarten versus what they're assessed in first grade. And we sometimes found that, we thought students were broken, only to find out that the measures were really not, did not really speak to one another. And so we've utilized and will continue to utilize the first half of the year to really push support services into the classroom to determine those students that really need those supports once January rolls around. And then we'll offer those supports accordingly. Thirdly, we have talked about ensuring equal access, opportunity, and choice for all students, specifically supporting the social and emotional learning of students through collaborative problem-solving strategies. So at Palmer, we really focus on a lot of social and emotional supports for students. The next slide just shows a few of the ways that we do support through the Positivity Project, through community-based approaches like McMahon-Ryan Child Advocacy Center, utilizing Second Step as a teaching tool for students, a newly implemented Liberty Resources individual counseling system, and then the addition of a school counselor for us at Palmer. And I think Mrs. Furr is going to talk a little bit about her use of Second Step in the classroom.
I was just going to say that at all levels, I think that the social, emotional, and mental health piece has been increasingly more obvious in the classroom, and I think the addition of having an additional counselor in the building, or multiple people that can help address the needs of our students, even our youngest kids that are in K and 1. Sometimes it may just be a social thing where they just need some practice with interacting with friends. I think that's been really beneficial. I think this year we've really started to focus on using that Second Step as another piece of the puzzle, kind of tying that in with the Positivity Project, and building relationships, also working on the child's ability to be a good listener, to show respect for others. So at least in the primary grades, I think our goal has been to focus on one of those Second Step lessons each week and kind of build on it each day and go back and review some of the things that are covered in that. So I really feel like we have a lot of pieces that we're missing to help support our students in that area this year.
I would like to just cite, in terms of our diversity committee at Palmer, we did institute this year an inclusive family questionnaire. So I posted up there that we actually received about 250 responses based on information from families to really talk about family dynamics, things that are important to families in our community. And we were able to actually furnish that information specifically to classroom teachers. It focused on all sorts of things, observances within homes, important adults for students within our families. So we thought that was a really great thing. It gave some really interesting information to our teaching staff just to better support students. Our plan is to administer as well a belonging survey for students, just to kind of get a gauge in the October-November range of how students are feeling about their experiences in their classrooms, whether they have friends in their classrooms, friends on the bus, just the importance of meaningful relationships for them within the school building, and then gathering that information and trying to support students accordingly. So obviously getting that information back if we see that students are struggling in those particular areas, then we want to make sure that we're utilizing our support staff to best support students and provide the best experience we can at Palmer.
Thank you, everyone. Just a couple quick questions. So a lot of the mention here for things like the races and all that, K through 5, how do you incorporate in the pre-K now that we have that? Are they kind of independent of all this, or are we?
No, I actually had a conversation specifically with pre-K today during a pre-conference for an observation, and in many ways, those initial restating and answering of questions are things that they feel like they can very much be a part of in their own very morning meetings. They've already implemented some of the pieces of that puzzle, and so the feeling is that will better prepare a kindergarten group to come in, and then ultimately, as we've seen, each group has gotten stronger as they progress. So the hope would be that Mrs. Furr would get a more skilled group coming in at first grade, having another year under their belt, which equals Mrs. Kowalski getting an even stronger group, and hopefully, those results continue to prove themselves. So it's really it's really inclusive of all of the grade levels, and something that generally helps in students communicating with not only their peers but within their classroom settings.
If I can just add to that, just thinking about a child's ability to express themselves orally, I think that's important first. We kind of need that piece before they can write about it. So starting that at the pre-K and kindergarten levels, just getting them comfortable speaking in front of their classmates and teachers, and then building upon that so that they're ready to begin that writing process in K and 1. Those are kind of the foundational skills, I think, to move on forward.
I was just gonna say as well that when then they can get to third grade, that they're not just doing an RACES, that there's many students that are able to include many pieces of evidence, so we can just keep building on that and really just kind of tailor it to where kids are at. But a child that might come in that might be a struggling reader, a struggling writer, they still at least have those tools that they've built upon since they've been at Palmer.
First of all, she's gonna freak out when I tell her that you were here. Not in a bad way. It's gonna be like I saw her, favorite movie star.
It will be the news tomorrow.
When I see her tomorrow morning, she's gonna freak out. So the numbers that you have, thank you all for being here and for everything that you're doing, by the way. The numbers that are in here, have you seen a consistent growth on the 2022 NYS ELA constructive response question?
We have. Like I said, looking at that gap report, there were gaps of above 25% in certain grade levels. Basically what I took a conglomeration of the 10 or so written responses that kids wrote, and we just looked at averages, and that's really what those averages looked like. So, huge gaps between the region, and what we thought were pretty significant gaps even within the district showed tremendous growth. We started at Palmer, we're not there yet, we're pretty close, but we started with trying to just eliminate students that were receiving zeros, kids that would get no credit for their writing. And as Mrs. Kowalski talked about, giving kids kind of a seemingly a format to follow, knowing exactly what will get them some credit has had tremendous impact. Students that seemingly would see the question and just kind of shut down now have an approach that they feel pretty comfortable and confident in using. And I was pleasantly surprised that if you heard anything about specifically the third grade test from last year, it was pretty brutal. It was a tough test. The kids actually wrote had six written responses, which was it was a tremendous amount of work. And I think this shows not only their level of skill, but obviously the stamina that they demonstrated through that experience. Because I was blown away with what kids were really expected to do after having a couple year hiatus and not really participating. It was great to see that kids fared so well.
And that really led into my second question, which Ms. Kowalski, I think you answered as well, is how is this, all of these new tools and implementations are assisting students that need the most help? I think you said that just having that framework in place gives them something to build on. So they may not have it all down, but gives them something.
Yeah, I think it gives kids at least a little handbook. It gives them a chance and a hope that they don't look at a question and feel defeated. They at least have a strategy that they can go to that's been the same since they've been in kindergarten. They know they can restate that question, they know how to do that. They just have to find that answer. They know how to search now to find a piece of evidence to prove it, and if that's all they get to, that's great. They all know how to sum it up at the end too. So
Are you seeing that now?
Absolutely,
from
absolutely. So
so
when we first started, it was something brand new. So there was lots of kids that they were like, I don't understand. But now that they have all of those pieces in play, we can start right in third grade and just kind of review, and then we can just fine tune it. We can push kids to go higher. We can keep kids right where they're at and help them just grow. But it's been very successful.
That's great. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
All of the data it is very impressive, it's very positive, and you all should be very proud of everything that you're doing. And compared to the region, those are very high marks, and even within the district. Your strategic plan was based on the RACES method, and I know that, I remember when that was first presented. I don't know how many other buildings are using that same strategy now, but I think it was Palmer that presented that first years ago. So I guess my question is, that's part of your strategic plan, that's part of your goal. So how do you see the improvement of your students within your building using your method and strategy? So like when I see the region, I don't know, like it's great, obviously the strategy is working, we think, because we're doing better than everyone else, but is it that strategy? So in-house, like how are third graders doing when they're in fourth grade? How are those fourth? Are you comparing from the previous year to their growth the next year? Are you comparing, because I remember you doing a data table last year with, you know, did they get a 0, a 1, or 2? And how did that progress throughout the year to know that the strategy is working and you're getting the growth that you want?
So our goal is to do that. We've had a couple years with no data, unfortunately, because of the modified test the year before, where kids only had to answer multiple choice questions. So we're a couple years off, unfortunately, because of that. I think, you know, not over speaking for the teachers, because I think they would be able to speak about that, but ultimately, I think the data supports students are doing better, but also the teachers are recognizing that they're seeing a better product, a more kind of capable writer as students progress through the grade levels. So as Ms. Kowalski talked about, there's less of that new introduction of skill. It's more now refinement of skill. So you have a group of, say, 5th graders this year who have worked through this process, and when it's reintroduced to them, they kind of hit the ground running. So they have really come to a point where they understand the pieces of the puzzle and can put those things together with much less, I guess, effort, so to speak. So we'll definitely be able to track information based on this year, and we, you know, as we implement some things throughout the course of the year and see students performing at those levels, the goal is really to show that we are seeing the growth overall from students. I know that, you know, since implementation, you know, we have historically, the kids have done much better. We were recognized as, you know, a school that had made tremendous growth a couple years ago, just specifically in state assessment results, and the hope is that we continue to see those results.
If I can just add too, I'm always adding something. We do use the RACES, we use a prompt at multiple times during the year, 3 or 4 times a year at each grade level. So we can kind of track our own students' growth within our classes and our grade levels and kind of talk about that information during our PLC meetings as well.
Thank you.
Thank you guys, great job. Team Durkee.
Gotcha. Okay. Good evening. We're here tonight to present the Durkee strategic plan for the 22-23 school year. With me is John Crane, one of our assistant principals. Lori Turton can't be with us tonight. She wasn't feeling well, and I asked her to stay home for the benefit of all of us. And I have Jen Medwitz here, who's going to speak a little bit on the TSI plan that Durkee is on. I'm going to start just by saying that 3 years ago, when I began as a principal, I inherited a strategic plan, and I've realized that we're doing a lot of good things, and those good things have now become our norms, which I believe that's the goal of a strategic plan, to make change in the building and have it continue. So this year, with the administrative team and our building leadership team, we've, because the TSI plan was a motivating factor of that as well, is we want to align it. So we made some changes so our strategic plan now aligns with our TSI plan. Through COVID, we all know that students have changed, or they've gone through a lot of change over the last 3 years. One thing that we found is, and I think it's important, that I know Renee Burnett says a lot, that we need to meet students where they are, not where we think they should be. And that's what I think our plan, that's one of our main things that we've looked at when developing the plan. And we also, as I said, as you know, we're a targeted school in the need of improvement in our special education, among our special education students. So we've taken our plan and aligned our 3 goals with our 3 goals of our TSI plan as well. So starting with that, I'm going to let Jen Medwood just start a little bit about the progress we've made, our planning progress and our next steps in our TSI plan.
For the benefit of people who are new to the board, I actually went through this slide with everybody back in the spring, but we've since had a change in some of our membership here, so I want to go through this with you. For the good of everyone, TSI means Targeted Support and Improvement. Durkee was put on a Targeted Support and Improvement list in around 2018, so it's been quite a bit of time. Since the original TSI plan was put into place, because of COVID and the way that testing worked, the procedures that the state had us go through in order to make our improvement plans became much more global. So the whole school was involved in the planning, not just the targeted support group. So when we talk about Durkee's strategic plan, it's a much more in-depth process that went into creating the strategic plan and the set plan that we're going to talk about tonight. Last year I served as a learning coach for our TSI schools, which is why I'm here. This year I'm currently doing my administrative internship, so I'll still have a role in helping to implement and facilitate meetings related to this plan. So we followed a procedure planned out for us by the state. We created a team of stakeholders, which included parents, teachers, and administrative staff. We did student climate surveys. We then used the information in the student climate surveys to interview students. We interviewed about 35 different students about their needs when it came to learning in the school and what made them feel welcome and feel a sense of belonging in the school. We went through an equity self-reflection process, which was based on the culturally responsive sustaining education framework. And we then, from there, made a huge list of our strengths and our areas that we needed to work on as a building and built our priorities from there. So from that, we came up with 3 different commitments. I won't read those to you. They're going to go through them as they discuss the different aspects of the plan. We've prioritized those 3 commitments. And the next steps, currently we are waiting on state designation of TSI and CSI schools, so we still do not know which schools of the district are going to be TSI and CSI schools, but we're going to continue to implement this plan throughout the year. When it comes to monitoring the implementation of the plan, there are 4 formal site visits that district representatives will take part in. In the actual plan, there are survey questions and points of data that we'll visit throughout the year to make sure that the plan is being put into place. We'll make adjustments as needed. This is a living document, and then we'll analyze the process at the end of the year.
So our first goal is, Jen mentioned, they're called commitments in our TSI plan. There are goals in our strategic plan. Our first goal is to provide an inclusive learning environment for all students. Our 2 main focuses this year are our special education population, obviously, to meet the needs and hopefully remove ourselves from the school needing improvement, and also our culturally responsive teaching and learning. So with our first focus of special education, not only is it a focus because we're on a plan, but more importantly, it's a focus because we want to make this an inclusive learning environment for all students. One way that we've done that is in the last, as you've heard over the last few years, one thing that's stayed consistent is we've really worked hard with improving our co-teaching practices with our teachers and improving how co-teaching is delivered at Durgee Junior High School. Again, that's one thing that's almost, down the road it's going to become a norm, and it's just gotten better and better every year. This year we were able to add some co-taught science classes. So in our 8th grade science, there's 2 sections of co-taught science, and also in our living environment, we were able to add 2 sections of co-taught living environment. That really, what we found is our 15-to-1 students were really, they were going into the same class and really needing support and not getting the support that they needed, because we didn't have 2 teachers in, we didn't have that special educator in there. We're able to add that this year, and again, we're 5 weeks in. The results of that, I think, will be in the update, or some data on that will be in the update, but I foresee that being a very good change and benefits a lot of our students. And also just co-teaching, we're continuing to work with Julie Costin, not only at Durgee now, I know as a district, we're working with Julie Costin and her inclusive schooling, with the help of Rocco Nally and our Director of Special Education. We were able to get a district, the district has a site license for inclusive schooling, where it's a platform that our teachers can go to, and they can reach out and get guidance from Julie and her team on special education best practices. So I'm going to turn to John for our second focus.
Sure. So our next focus is CRT&L, culturally responsive teaching and learning, and this is in response to greater and greater levels of Can you hear me now? All right. Greater and greater levels of diversity of all kinds in the classroom. We're really excited to kind of re-energize our connection with H.W. Smith this year through our community-wide dialogue. This is really a chance for our students to develop their cultural fluency by having kind of some of these difficult but really important conversations with a diverse group of students. In addition, we're all in on the work with Dr. Holly and the Center for Culturally Responsive Teaching and Learning this year. This month, actually, 9 of our teachers really opted in to have their practice observed and take some of the lessons they learned back out to the rest of the school. And in the end, we're really hoping that some of these learners turn into leaders here and help our whole instructional staff become more inclusive practitioners. Next is goal number 2, providing meaningful and relevant learning opportunities to all our students. Focus here is going to be creating and implementing new curriculum offerings, and also our student voice and choice initiative. So brand new, minted this year, is our Creating Legends curriculum. In this class, we're going to be delivering ELA disciplines like thematic storytelling through the lens of gaming. That kind of goes nicely with what we've been doing for a year already, year number 2, gaming concepts. And we'll continue to offer this and help kind of teach creativity in the tech space and kind of foster some of that real world understanding of bringing ideas to life in that digital space through gaming. Both of these dovetail with our speaker series this year. We have Dustin Hanson, best-selling author, who's going to talk about the story of video games and how storytelling happens in that media. And also Julie Smith, Dr. Julie Smith, will be addressing really the whole school in terms of how we can best use our social media. We have a lot of negatives, like don't do this on social media, don't do this. Her talk is really about what we should be doing, in all caps, on social media to bring positivity into our daily lives. We're also really proud of our science team. They've been able to integrate this inquiry called Mini PCR into the LE curriculum. And really what this is going above and beyond that Regents curriculum and giving kids a chance to kind of interact with the tools and technology that real scientists will be working with to solve real world problems. Most kids will only get to hear about this in readings, and they're going to be hands-on this year. A couple of our teachers will also be presenting at the Stannis Science Teachers Association in New York this November about their experience with that.
Our second focus is the voice and choice. Many of our teachers are using this, not all of them, but that's our goal, is to get everybody to have the voice and choice throughout the classroom. What we mean by this is students that have the voice in creating some classroom norms and routines. It helps buy-in. When you have the buy-in of the students, when they help to create these, and they feel that they had a true, I'm lost for words, but they will buy into it. I really truly feel that, and some teachers are seeing that right now. At the macro level, we have our student leadership team. Last year, we put together a group of students just to explore some of the stuff that we're doing, looking at our code of conduct. We look to continue that. One thing that they did last year is they had a voice in our hat, the expectations for hats and cell phones at Derby. And they gave us some input along with some community, some parent sessions that we had out, that we offered. And we gained some valuable information from that, and we made some changes to our expectations for those. I've heard nothing but positive things from not just our teachers, but more importantly our students. You don't see the student connected to their phone. You don't walk by a classroom and see a student sneaking the phone. You don't see that. So they've really bought in, and that's kudos to the students. The choice, some things that teachers are doing is like your content. Instead of having one book to teach a theme, there's a series of books to teach a theme, and the student gets a choice of what book they're going to read. And then the process, how they're going to learn it. I mean, maybe they're a visual learner, maybe an auditory learner, but giving them that choice to learn the way that best fits them. And then the product, we're all used to, you get that multiple choice test at the end. That's not the best way to gauge all students' learning. So giving them a choice of possibly, and maybe it's a test, but possibly it's writing an essay, creating a poster, something that they enjoy doing, but can still just show that they're learning the content that we intend them to learn. And our third goal is to provide and improve our multi-tier system of support. This was a real big one for us this year. One thing that we're proud of, especially our LIFT team, our building leadership team, is very proud of, is we've restructured our master schedule, how our day looks. We had, if everybody's familiar, if you're familiar with Derby, you've heard of link time. That was a time in the middle of the day where students could get some support. It wasn't a continuous time, so there was some break in action. So a student could have a 20-minute study hall, then lunch, then a 20-minute study hall again. I don't know how many 8th and 9th graders you've been around, but once you get them focused for 20 minutes and then give them lunch, that other 20 minutes isn't going to be as productive as you want it to be. So what we've done is we've taken that time and we've gone a 9-period school day like we traditionally have, but we've extended the middle periods. Instead of our lunches being 25 minutes, we've gone to 40-minute lunches, which is what Baker does. And at the end of the day, we have a 36-minute non-interrupted time to support students. That time is split up where we have half of our subject areas have an A-day help lab session, the other half are covering the classrooms for a study hall, structured type of I shouldn't say structured type of study hall, but a study hall. Then on B days it's the opposite, so they're paired. And I mean, this has really helped us because there's your tier 2 intervention, and it's part of your normal school day. What I will say, again, I'll have a lot more data that in our when we come and update you, but just in a 2-week period. So it's 8 days so far. And to add on that is teachers needed some collaboration time. And so every Friday is a collaboration time. So this half of the teachers or half of the departments are collaborating on every other Friday, while the other half are obviously supervising the study hall. What we've seen over that, so that gives us 8 days that the help labs have been in session, and we've had students take advantage of the help labs 772 times over 8 days. So that can tell you I can't give you the exact number, but 772 times those help labs were taken advantage of. And this has helped us, this time's helped us hone in on our IST process, because now that's probably our biggest, looking at the numbers and the students taking advantage of it, making sure the right students are there is our next step in our process. And we just met as a LIFT team last Wednesday trying to develop, and we're going to meet on a more consistent basis to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the students that really do need those interventions. And finally, this year we were able to expand our AIS support in English 9 and Algebra. We chose English 9 and Algebra, the credit-bearing courses, so that was our choice there, but I'm hoping to be able to expand that to our 8th grade in the future. Just giving, again, another support for the students to find success.
And our final focus here that fits right into MTSS is our restorative practices, our way to support behavior and SEL in our student body here. This year's work really started in the summer. We were able to put a really great team together to be that kind of building-based restorative practice committee. They did a great job doing a lot of learning, but dove right into the process of taking what we've learned and put it to work at what we need to happen at Durkee. The two big focuses that we have this year are community building initiative, building wide. We're basically teaching kids how to humanize each other and humanize their teachers. What we really want to do is make repair a big part of the solution process when it comes to behavior and when there's issues in the classroom, and that's how we are able to kind of start that. The next big thing is a restorative disciplinary alternative. This will be kind of something we roll out marking period 2. It's really our first shot at this, and we're looking to make sure that we have an option when it comes to if there's any kind of classroom removal or some issue in the classroom that needs kind of an acute stoppage, we have a chance to not just discipline it away, but bring teacher and student to the table to work out, find a way to repair it, and move back into the day with ease.
Thanks. I don't think it's a secret to anybody that special education is pretty, not that things are less important, but it's fairly important to me in my perspective as a parent of a student at school who's a unique learner. And Baldwinsville has the reputation as really, and I don't think this is hyperbole, but as the pinnacle of districts for special education. That we provide our students with the best education for those unique learners and those kids that need that assistance. So I think it's important, and I thank you for, and I understand obviously the schools on the targeted list, so part of it is state implemented. But I thank you for continuing to make sure that whatever happened in the last 5 or so years to get us there, that we're going to get ourselves out of it. So I really appreciate that you continue to maintain that focus. I did have a couple of questions. Can you tell me what the partnership with H.W. Smith in the city of Syracuse looks like? What does that mean?
I can speak to that. This is something that, the community-wide dialogue, which I think Baker spoke a little bit about, they have a partnership with Corcoran. And the partnership or the program at the middle school is a little bit different than the high school. The high school is more student-led and facilitated, and they talk about just ending. It's really what we're looking at is ending racism is what it was, but it's kind of gotten bigger than that. With our partnership, it's the same type of questions, just not that level. The same type of conversations, just not at the level of a high school student. And it's facilitated by the adults. And it's just to just spread the word that everybody, I mean, we're the same. We're the same people. We are here for the same thing. We want to get an education. We're from Baldwinsville. It doesn't matter what your skin color is, what your gender is. It doesn't matter. And they approach those type of topics in their professional way. I mean, it's led by the community-wide dialogue. They have trained professionals that oversee and facilitate the overall conversation. But it's a great program. I've been involved in it as an educator for the better part of 16 years. I'm proud to say that I'm the one that brought it here to Baldwinsville 10 years ago, I believe, the better part of 10, maybe 9 years ago. It's just, I just seen, we haven't had a bad experience with it, except for COVID, when we couldn't do the best part of it. The students enjoy it, and probably the most powerful point is when you bring the two students from two different backgrounds together and have those conversations, and you figure out, you see what stereotypes really are. It's very, very powerful. And last couple of years, we thought it was so powerful that we did an in-house version of it because we couldn't exchange with them, but we still brought community-wide dialogue in, and we had a group of our own students go through that process. I don't know if it's...
I graduated from Heidegger High School, kind of getting longer and longer ago, each year that goes by, but I would have appreciated a program like that, very much so. When I was in high school, Baldwinsville seemed like another country. It was that far away. It was like, Baldwinsville, I can't get out there. I don't have that kind of time, so I would appreciate that. And then kind of the last point or question, have like the gaming concepts that you're using are awesome. How are we ensuring that our unique learners and kids that are in special education, making sure basically that it's accessible to all of our students?
I'll speak and then John can add to it, but I do know, I will add that we do have a co-teaching section of not gaming concepts, but we do have one, because gaming concepts is it falls in our math and technology curriculum, but for ELA there is a need to create a section of co-teaching to meet the needs of all of our learners. So we do have that opportunity for everybody, for all students, not just.
That's great, and thank you so much for the presentation and everything, and I really appreciate all the information.
So going back to the community-wide dialogue, Azan has some comments he would like to make, and Jeff and I did as well, but we're going to wait to see what he says because we may not need to.
I was waiting to see. I was going to ask if Azan, if you were part of that program.
I guess it was just more of I wanted to make sure I could comment on a few things. Not so much just specifically the community-wide dialogue, but obviously I was a student at Derby pretty recently, and it sounds like it's changed for the benefit, and I guess it's just, it's good to hear. Like, I've been part of our student advisory council at Baker, just since last year because of COVID, but when we met with Derby Student Advisory Council last year, it was nice to see that they had groundwork there, and then obviously, it'll be great when they move up to Baker that they already know how things are going to work. Once something's already in place, it's so much easier for it to actually become a thing. The Positivity Project, I guess, is another great example of that. It's almost uncomfortable being a high school student and just having them be like, here's the Positivity Project, do it. But if it's introduced at an earlier level, the students are so much more used to it and so much more likely to, it's just good to see. And I'm also, a big reason I even wanted to be here was just being able to represent diversity throughout a district. Beeville's done a pretty good job at making sure that that's more important recently. Being a member of a few of those different marginalized groups, it's nice to hear that Derby is also putting forth their attention to those marginalized groups. I think also being a student, like you talked about,
recording in progress.
Students having voice in what they get to learn and their classroom policies, that's also definitely good for students that without
Recording
like,
stopped.
assuming things about the way the students think, but I don't know, it's beneficial to a kid to be able to sit there and go, well, I made an impact on this classroom. And without rambling on too much further, I guess I just wanted to say, like, that's all good to hear.
Recording in progress.
And community-wide dialogue, I unfortunately wasn't able to be a part of last year, but I know kids that were, and they enjoyed it a lot at Baker. And yeah, I guess I'm just glad to hear what's going on at Derby.
I would like to say that when you were at the Baker, you invited Board of Education members to sit in on a couple of those sessions. And I would say, you know, just sitting off into the booth in the library, just completely amazed with the types of conversations that were going on and that it was student-led. And people were like real. I mean, they obviously developed, you know, some trust over the year. I saw one of the ones at the end and what the types of tough discussions that they were able to have. And I agree with Azan because I don't believe it's at Derby, and it wasn't at that time at least, but I think when it's introduced a lot sooner, it would be interesting to see how much farther those high school conversations even went with some of that foundational building at Derby.
Just as a point of clarification for folks at home, we had the internet drop out, so that's why you heard, well, people here heard the recording stopped, recording started. So we apologize for that. Hopefully you can see us here now.
They'll have to log back in, which they're not watching, so they don't do that.
We can
But
maybe
hopefully
make
they can figure that out.
Make an announcement at the end.
If not, the recording will be available tomorrow.
Team Derby, thank you very much.
I just had,
I'm sorry, John.
no, that's okay. So just want to comment on the community dialogue. I think the most powerful thing for me was, as Jen said, we were invited to kind of sit in the back and listen. And it was pretty amazing that, you know, at the time, it was a few years ago, pre-pandemic, so I didn't have any kids at the high school and probably maybe not even Derby yet. So I didn't know any of the students in the room. And for us who came in and observed it, it was hard to tell who was the Baldwinsville kids and who was the Corcoran kids, because they were intermingled so well and they interacted like I didn't know who was who, but the dialogue was amazing. So you know, if there's a way that the board can observe that at Derby and just kind of see how that, you know, is building up there, and then observe the one at the high school, I think that would be really powerful for the board. So if there's a way to do that without disrupting, you know, it was amazing dialogue to listen to, and I don't want to disrupt that by us being there, but if there's any way we can sit in the back and just kind of observe, it would be great if you can figure out a way. And you don't have to commit to that right now, but just throwing that out there.
No, we always want Board of Education,
We always do want our district office, Board of Education, to see those type of things. So there will be an invitation, at least from Derby. I can't speak on behalf of Bill Allen, who I know runs it at Baker, but I'll tell him that he has to invite me.
Can I just ask, how do students get involved in this? Is this something that they sign up for? Is it something they're nominated for? How does that work?
All right, you can hear me.
I know at Baker there's an application process, which there's 15 spots and there's usually the better part of 60 applications, so that's not and we made it an application process where they answer a few short questions. We don't make it a homework assignment, but we want to make sure they're in it for the right reason. Because you'll see some answers, hey, it would be cool to hang out at a city school. Well, that's not the student we're looking for. We want the student that's looking to go to the city school to make a difference. Those type of and then the junior high level, the process, and I'll be honest with you, my first year we went through we started the process, so the junior high process, and then it never happened because of COVID, but I do know they chose them. I do know it's a different process. I couldn't give you the exact process with that until I sit through that process with our instructors. But there is some sort of an interview or some sort of a referral process, so we know that we're getting students that are there for the right reason.
And I'll just add to that. I mean, if community-wide dialogue is the kind of pinnacle of that type of conversation, what we're doing with restorative practices is specifically community building. is how we're going to get everybody to build that skill set so that that's not a reach in the end. It does take a certain skill set to be able to have those kind of conversations, to be able to sit in a circle and listen, right? Not everyone who's 13-year-old has that, and that's really the goal of a lot of this community building work we're going to be doing this year, is to build that skill set so that those higher level conversations can be had in the long run.
And then other question to follow up on that, is this information shared with the other students, or is it just between the people that are part of the group, or how does this information get out to everybody?
Well, our hope is that that's where it makes a difference. It gets out in the hallways from the 15 or 20 students that are able to be in there. They're out talking to their friends. They're out being the ones that hopefully start to make that difference. Or hear something in the hallway and be able to stop them and have a conversation and direct the conversation in a non-confrontational way. So that's the hard work. The easy work is getting the 15 or 20 students, but then the hard work is now getting it and making a difference in the whole community of Durgee or Baker.
How often do you meet?
At the junior high level, there's 6 student meetings, 3 at each school. And then the facilitators meet, they have 1 training day as well. That's at the junior high level. I'm not sure the high school is very similar to the time frame.
Thank you very much. Great job. Next on our agenda is the Capital Project Facilities Committee presentation, please.
Do you want me to just start into the review of the meeting? I guess to start, we have some of our industry partners that are helping with design and figuring out the costs and stuff. I'd invite you guys to come up to the table just in case board members have questions. A lot of the difficult answers will come from them if you guys do have any questions as we go through. So, and I'm not sure if there's only 2 members of the facility committee here today, so I don't know if you guys just want to go down and introduce yourselves just for the benefit of those at home and some of the board members that.
Sure. I'm Amanda Thomas, King & King Architects. I'm a project manager for King & King.
Robert Marquetta with LaChase Construction, project manager.
Gary Herbert, LaChase Construction.
Okay. Thanks for being here. So we had a good meeting last week, and what we did was, we reviewed the current projects, and so far all the current projects are underway. No real issues, and I'll save some time and just kind of go into the new one we're looking at. So what you see on the screen here, Project 1 is what we just got approved last year, or this year I guess in May. So that's the Durgee the primary focus of that one is the big Durgee renovations that'll hopefully start up in another year or so to when we'll start seeing dust fly and things like that. But so you're all very familiar with the Project 1. Project 2 will be the focus of this year's capital project that we'll put up for vote in May. 3, 4, and 5. Notice the timeline along the bottom there, and the time frames of these are kind of out in time because of, one reason is as debt falls off, we can fill that. That's kind of been our strategy for quite a while, to minimize any impacts to tax base in Baldwinsville. But the other grouping there for 3, 4, and 5, notice it's a lot of elementary school topics plus some other Project 4 there you see, that's Durgee, that's the additional stuff we talked about last year. So a second floor to bring 7th grade over. So really 3, 4, and 5 are kind of the much bigger strategic changes to the district that we'll start focusing on when we get through the plan for Project 2, which will really be what we talk about today. So 3, 4, and 5 down the road, but really is the major strategic changes to the district. So we won't talk about those really here today. We're just going to focus on 2. No, the stuff below there, yeah, we don't need to go, we'll skip that. So really, here is the bulk of the work at Baker and athletic fields on main campus. So basically turfing, is there the picture? Yeah, so coming up will be the picture of all this, but really it's turning that whole area kind of between Eldon and the stadium into turf fields for bringing softball over from Ray so that they can play on main campus. The new turf fields you'll see, you can do baseball and softball simultaneously on lit fields there. And then if you see the lines and stuff, basically any sport can be played on those. So those will be multi-use year-round fields. So the pool is one of the was a later addition because working with our industry partners here and Kim, finding ways to essentially remodel the small gym is what it's being kind of billed as. So it's not new construction. These guys can get into the details of what that does to the impact of the cost and the state aid, but it works out quite in our favor that if we basically tear down the small gym and in the same footprint build a 6-lane pool with diving and all that, we can pretty much fill in that 60-year-old pool that's there now. So that would be moving the pool over to there, and then the next one down, making the main gym basically twice as big as it is. So we can have large events in there, you can get the whole school in there, plus, we can have more activities in there, and then when we do have games or other things in there, we can get much larger attendance. It gets pretty tight in there on a basketball game or volleyball games or things like that. So that would expand that, and then a running track on basically the second floor, like what we proposed for Durgee last year. But this year it's in for the main gym to have a running track up I don't know if it's suspended, but it's basically the second floor. So you kind of run along the top there. I don't think it's suspended, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, they actually do suspend it from the roof structure.
Okay. So it's gonna be up there. It's not gonna be on the main floor, so it's out of the way. So refreshing the locker rooms, we all kind of went through there in our tour last year, or in the past couple of years. The cages are probably going to be removed and things like that we saw in there. Another for the educational side, for science, though, renovating that whole science wing, modernizing it, making new spaces up there. A lot of infrastructure stuff, just stuff that most people wouldn't see but is required. And then another exciting thing is a whole new access road for parent drop-off and pickup, and additional parking. So if we get to the map there, it's much easier. So here's the footprint. So that where the cursor is now is that new 6-lane pool with the diving in it. And there is the expanded gym. So I think the grayer part, or whatever color that is the existing gym, and then that new red part is over the existing pool. So that will be all one space. And then you see the track going around it. And then that's the locker room refurb and other things. Brand new entrance into there, so kind of modify and upgrade that entrance into that whole area. Instead of that small hallway kind of thing you got right now, it'll kind of open that way up and make it more of a sports entrance, if you will, for the sporting side of it. And on the second floor, you'll see here, you can still see that track there, and then all the things he's on right now, that'll be upgrades to all the science wing, all the science rooms be upgraded. So quite a bit of work at Baker. And then here is the facility plan. So where he's going now, so there will be an entrance from Oswego Street that kind of goes down the property line there, and then you can exit out of that, what's that street called? Oneida. So you can basically go out to that street that you would normally come in on now. There's parking there, and then they got that parking lot divided from the bus loop so that there's no kind of interference from those vehicles getting in the way of the buses, so the buses still have a pretty clear way in and out. So that was something that came out of the traffic study. Now you see that the big green rectangle in the middle, so that's the kind of the new fields. You can, if you look really closely, you can see baseball and softball fields in the bottom left and upper right. So that would be the baseball, I think, and that's the softball. And if you look at the lines really close, you can actually play 2 games simultaneously. So we could get a lot of activity on campus. But then you see all the other lines. Those are all the other sports that can use those fields when they're not in use that way. So, and all lit, so those can be, we can get a lot more sports in on campus because of, the drainage and all those improvements that we kind of fight with now. So, new parking over there at Durgee. So right now when you come in, I think there's like a garden thing over there, and that's pretty much it, right? So expanding parking. Notice in last year's, at the top of the turf field, they were thinking about expanding that parking into there, but then that kind of squeezed that field down, so you couldn't have both fields simultaneous during spring season. So this way, by moving that parking over to C, not only does it give more parking to Durgee, but it also, opens up that space to have more field space up there. And I don't think, was D? No. Yeah, D is part of it too, right?
D is actually part of the Durgee project, so that's why we left that in there.
Oh,
so
okay.
what this kind of displays is if we move forward with the Baker project, this is what the whole campus would look like with the Durgee project we're designing right now and the new project
and the
that
new
we're
capital
proposing.
project. So that is the scope for both the one we voted, already approved, or got approved by the voters, and the new scope for this one. A lot of cool changes. Ray is kind of the same plan for the most part, what we talked about last year. So it's a lot of infrastructure thing, reconfiguring that whole technology, music, art side of the building on the right. Reconfiguring locker rooms and gym space, a lot of classroom upgrades, walls, some of those portable, or not portable, but just non-permanent walls. Flooring, so a lot of the bus grade, loop upgrades, a lot of that stuff, you can see it on the map. Is there a map for this one? No. Yeah. So the spaces here that are impacted, so you got some, major renovations on the right, so over in the science and gym area and those kind of things, and then, minor or medium renovations for all the classroom spaces. A lot of work there. Pretty much the same scope there as we talked about before. I think this is the phase 3, 4, and 5 now, right?
So this is actually included because when it has to do with the funding and the aidability.
Okay.
So the reason why we're adding some scope of work inside of Eldon and Durgee is so that we can make sure we're maximizing our aidability, which is one of the big discussions I think we had with the board last spring. So without getting into all of the details of that, that's kind of why we haven't committed to what that work would be, but we have to do a small amount of work inside to be able to have funding for all of the site work that we want to do outside.
Okay. Oh, so this is I'll let you take this one, Kim. This is your area.
So this is one of the questions
money.
that came up, I think, from a board member at some point when we were talking about the project, is the overall health of our district, our reserves. So what this slide does is it shows all of our reserves. The green is our capital reserve. So we actually have taken the money out of the capital reserve to support the Durgee project that was already approved. And then we went to the voters and actually asked them to create a new capital reserve last year. And we were able to fund part of that. So this is showing that with the fact of how we chose to use the grant money in this district, we did create what we wanted to do and have some funds available to help support our infrastructure and our capital projects going forward. So this demonstrates that very clearly with the green bar staying very healthy.
With its current balance at 8.6 million-ish, right? Yeah.
Correct.
So we had kind of two versions here, and really the only difference in version is how much capital we wanted to allocate for this. And since I've been on the board, we've generally had healthy capital reserves, and usually there's some comments every year about why aren't you guys using this more to lessen the impact? And so we chose to go with the higher amount, 7.5, and as you saw on the previous slide, we currently have 8.6. So where that really comes down to the bottom line is, which is basically that bottom number, or the bottom two numbers, I guess. So what is the impact to the taxpayer? If you remember some of the numbers from last year, they were significantly higher than that, and that's kind of where a lot of our consternation came from, right? So this year, our goal was, let's minimize that number to as far down as we can, and with using 7.5, that leaves about $1 million in reserves. We're at a total impact on the tax levy of 0.83. So what does that mean? That means about a $16 increase for every $100,000 of value of home. So even at, say, a $500,000 home, we're talking about, that number. So, that's, less than $100 a year, and that's for a $500,000 home. So we felt as a facility that is the recommendation we wanted, kind of met all the goals that we were trying to get in there previously, but it also, we listened to the kind of the larger board comments and tried to reduce that number and maximize. The other thing is maximizing that state aid number, or aidability of 87%, which is significantly higher than what we were looking at last year. So we felt pretty comfortable bringing this to the board, and I'm pretty comfortable bringing this to the community if the board agrees with that. So what are we looking at? So the goal, so we don't have a long timeline here, so we're hoping that we read the board well, and they agree to, agree that we took the right approach here. So why? Because we need to finalize really the scope of work this month. Next month, start informing the public that this is what we want to go to vote for in May, because the big one is really that board action in December, so that we can stay on track to have a public vote in May, which is that seeker, which if you have more questions on what that is, I'll defer to our industry partners and Kim. But so really our goal is to be on the ballot in May with this project. So you can see after that, the timeline for these projects get pretty long. The Durkee one is no different, that we just approved in May, but you're starting to see timelines of 2025 to 28 for construction. So, even though we get to vote on this in 2023, we're still, a few years from seeing this to fruition, but, we got to start the groundwork now. So, with that, I think we're at the last slide, so I'll hand it over to the board and see what kind of questions. Feel free to ask questions there too. So.
I'll start. I want to thank the facilities committee. I know this was a lot of work, so thank you all. Thank you all for everything that you've been doing and continue to do. I am extremely pleased with what was in this tonight. I think this is phenomenal. It's exciting for our students. It's exciting for our staff and administration as well. So just overall, from me, thank you. And that's really going to be a suspended track?
Yes, that is one way to do it. It's usually how they're done.
Is that how they do it at like the Y too? Like the Beeville Y, is they're suspended, or is it like?
I haven't seen that one.
Okay.
So I can't say for sure, but typically that's how, so you don't get columns that go down to the gym floor. So people aren't running into columns on that first floor. So they usually hang them from the roof structure.
Who decides, I guess, like what scope of work needs to be done? Like when we're redoing the science wing and that kind of thing, are we asking the teachers? Are we, like, how do we get that information? I'm just curious.
So we start out with the bigger picture. We can't get into the detail. It's very similar to Durkee. We are really prohibited from getting into the detailed work because that starts costing a lot of money. So what happened with Durkee is once we got voter approval, and now we've been in the design phase where we're sitting down with each group of teachers that is impacted at Durkee and talking with each of those groups and kind of coming back and forth with designs. We've done that 2 or 3 times at this point with Durkee right now. So once we got voter approval and then we were able to start that design phase, the same thing would happen with Baker. I know there was some conversation from the facilities committee before in regards to, you know, making sure that athletics and some of those coaches were involved on the front end, and I know Joe did take the drawings up and spoke with those people, and we sent back a little bit of feedback, but again, we're kind of ahead of ourselves right now because we really need that voter approval to be able to pay our wonderful consultants for that detail work.
Do we get any kind of community feedback, like, oh, I think we should do this, or that kind of thing?
Well, I think that we did hear a little bit last year when we started backing away some of the work that we took away because of the aidability factor. What we would like to do is start getting that information out in the November Hive so we can start that dialogue with the community and see what kind of support is out there. And I think that once we, you know, if the board approves us to go forward with this project, is Jeff was alluding to, that next project is going to take a lot more planning because there's a lot more of intricate details that we really have to work through, and that's where Funding the Future and that whole committee that Sam can speak to probably better than I from back in 2017-18 was really looking at this whole master plan. So what we've done because of the time and our debt falling off is really the Durkee project supports moving forward with the rest of that work or a standalone. And the work at Baker, again, is needed irregardless of how we end up looking at those K-5 buildings and what that looks like. So, and the Ray work as well, that's all work that can benefit our students being in the configuration we're in now or in the new configuration.
Having sat on the committee for Funding the Future, we saw a need to move forward to look at all the buildings, to look at the conditions that the buildings were in, not only if we were to renovate or build new, and there's just a need within the community that we saw that we needed to go forward and do some major renovations in our district.
Any other thoughts or questions?
No, I would say that we are definitely moving forward, which is a good thing.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you. Nice summation,
Jeff, that
Jeff.
was, me too. Thank you, Jeff, that was very well done.
Independent auditor, Kim?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mike DeBotz. I'm a partner with Mendel Metzger Bar and Company. I was out a few weeks ago. I had a nice long meeting with the audit committee to go over the results of the financial statement audit for 2022. And during that capital project discussion, you guys actually touched on a lot of the things that I was going to highlight from the 22 fiscal year. So I'll keep it brief so you guys can get on with your meeting this evening. But the bottom line is, from a financial statement standpoint, the district had a very positive year in 2022. I don't think there was any surprises during the audit or in the way that the numbers shook out at the end of the day. The total fund balance in the general fund increased by $145,000 during the year. Couple of things just to add into that. As was mentioned and in the graph, the district did send $5 million over to as seed money for the new capital project that the voters approved last year, and then utilized another about $1.8 million from other reserve funds and was able to fund the newly created capital reserve and the little bit of space that was left in the old capital reserve to get back up to that $8.6 million balance in the capital reserve that was mentioned in that capital plan discussion. A couple of things that really led to that was, as Kim mentioned earlier, the federal funding that came in. The federal funding that the district received was almost 3 times what it typically is in a normal year. That went from about $2.7 million up to $7.2 million in 2022. So, you know, really utilizing those funds to help further the future project plans this year. We did note a couple of minor procedural items that you would have seen in the corrective action that was attached to your board packet this evening. You know, like I said, minor items. I don't think that there's any too much cause for concern. Your business office is operating effectively and efficiently through our results. And then just to touch on one of the items in that plan dealing with the school lunch fund balance being in excess of what the federal guidelines suggest that it should be. You know, I only work with one district where we've put the financials out so far this year that doesn't have that comment. And that's really just a result of, you know, almost 2.5 years of fully reimbursed meals for all students. And really the district has done a great job of driving participation in that, which is, you know, not the worst problem to have, but, you know, unfortunately we're gonna criticize that. Well, I shouldn't say criticize, but point out that fund balance in our management letter. Does anybody have any questions? Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ready for the trip request?
Yes, sir.
So the first trip request we have, first reading is for the marching band to participate in the Kingston Marching Band Home Show in Kingston, New York. The reason it's coming to the board as part of their schedule is due to the distance. They're looking for an overnight, and this will appear for board approval on October 17th. Questions on that trip? The second trip, first reading is for the Baker News to attend, a select group of students to attend the All-American High School Film Festival in New York City on October 21st through the 24th. And this is due to their selection of their work being presented there, and hopefully they'll be recipients of some of the awards. So they're there for that event and hopefully bring home some recognition to our district. This obviously is an overnight trip due to the distance. Any questions related to that trip? Textbook adoption, first reading, grade K. We've got a series of texts. This first one is for the book A Family is a Family is a Family. And this is designed, all of these books are designed to be mentor texts, which are pieces of literature that both the teacher and the student can return to and reread for many different purposes over the course of a unit of study. And so that's what we're looking to have approved for these texts that you see here. So again, the first one was the kindergarten, A Family is a Family is a Family. Item F is another kindergarten text, which is Families, Families, Families. And then report G switches to first grade, and that text is Island Born. And then the next one for item H is Roller Coaster. So all of these will appear on the agenda at our next meeting for approval. I know that you've had them in the weekly letter, and we also have copies available if you would like to check those out. You can send an email to Jason and Christy Nall, and we'll make sure you get a copy.
I just wanted to add, I don't know if if Baldwinsville has a membership to Overdrive or Sora, but there's some really great audiobook versions of these. The only one I wasn't able to find was, I think it was Island Born by Juno Diaz, but the other ones are quite fantastic. So just encourage you to also listen to the audiobooks.
And I'll just point out too, you're going to see a series of other textbooks. So we've hit K and 1 this meeting. Next meeting you'll have a first reading, I believe, 2 other grade levels, and it's going to be like that for the next few meetings, just based on updates to the elementary series.
All right, we're going to move on to new business. Item A, resolved that the Baldwinsville Marching Band travel to participate in the Bands of America Regional Competition in Newark, Delaware, October 8th through 10th, 2022, pursuant to the attached. Can I have a motion, please? Tony first. Second, Wayne. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 6-0. Item B, resolved that the Board of Education accept the independent audit report for the Baldwinsville Central School District for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022, as presented by Mr. Michael DeBath, CPA, with Mangel, Metzler Bar and Company, LLP, and the corrective action plan pursuant to the attached. Can I have a motion, please?
Move.
Tanya first. Wayne second. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 6-0. Item C, resolved that the Board of Education accept the corrective action plan for the Office of State Comptroller 2022 audit report for the Baldwinsville Central School District as attached. Can I have a motion, please?
Move.
Jeff first.
Second.
Second, Tanya. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 6-0. Item D, resolved that the Board of Education approve the award of contract for the 2021 Capital Improvement Project Phase 1 pursuant to the attached. Can I have a motion, please?
Move.
Tony
Second.
first, Wayne second. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 6-0. Item E, resolved that the Board of Education approve the contract resolution appointing the Chase Construction Services LLC as a construction manager for the Baldwinsville Central School District pursuant to the attached. Can I have a motion, please?
Move.
Second.
I think that was Jeff first, Tanya second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 6-0. Item F, resolved that the Board of Education approve the contract transportation agreement pursuant to the attached. Can I have a motion, please?
Move.
Tony first.
Second.
Second, Jeff. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 6-0. Item H, resolved that the Board of Education accept the attached donation of sanitizer at an estimated cost of $3,000. Oh, did I miss one? Oh, item G, sorry, thank you. Item G, resolved that the Board of Education approve the contract resolution appointing King & King Architects as the architects of the Baldwinsville Central School District 2022 capital project pursuant to the attached. Can I have a motion, please?
Move.
Wayne first.
Second.
Second, Tanya. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 6-0. Now, item H, resolved that the Board of Education accept the attached donation of sanitizer at an estimated value of $3,000. Can I have a motion, please?
Move.
Tony first.
Second.
Second, Jeff. Any questions or discussion?
I was just wondering if there was a particular brand, where it was from?
It was from the Costco general manager. I'm not sure what the brand was, but we did do a comparison. I think there was a memo actually that was attached.
Yeah, let me see.
You all set?
Thank you.
Welcome. All in favor? Opposed? Passes 6-0. Item I, resolved that the Board of Education approve the authorization of applications for corrected tax roll for 2022 pursuant to the attached. Can I have a motion, please?
Move.
Tony first.
Second.
Second, Jeff. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 6-0. Oh, opposed, excuse me, opposed. Passes 6-0. Item J, resolve that the Board of Education approve a new ECA club account for the Amnesty International Club pursuant to the attached. Can I have a motion, please?
Move.
Wayne first,
I'll second.
second Tony. Are there any questions? I do have one here from Frank. He sent some notes about the other items, but I think they were answered throughout the meeting. But this one was, how the district help establish a secure collection mechanism and research charities so that the money raised goes to the appropriate groups. Is there a process for that?
So it's a student-run account. There is an advisor that is a paid advisor that helps to advise the students, help them make good choices, but it is a student-run account, so they have full control over how they choose to utilize the funding that's raised and how they advocate for various charities and groups.
Does anyone else have any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Passes 6-0. Item K, resolve that the Board of Education approve the disposal of surplus equipment and instructional materials pursuant to the attached. Can I have a motion, please?
Move.
Tony first.
Second.
Second, Wayne. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Passes 6-0. We've moved on to the board roundtable. And we have, the screen just went black, if you just want to see that. Okay, first for board roundtable, we have the proposed bylaws, amendments, and resolutions for the NISBA annual meeting. So this is a conversation we have about any of the resolutions that are being proposed from the different school districts across the New York State that submitted them to the NISBA Resolution Committee for consideration for advocacy over the next year. Wayne's our representative this year to vote on our behalf, and in his absence, Sam would fill that role. So how we typically do this is we take it, as I said at the last meeting, that we agree with the position statements, the positions and decisions that the resolution committee has made, and we only discuss the ones that, you know, may need a little clarification or we don't agree with. So I will open the floor first to see if there's any of my board colleagues would like to discuss for consideration that does not agree with the NISBA Resolution Committee's proposals.
I had a question, probably for Kim, on Resolution 13. It's on page 18, it's Resolution 13, and I guess I just don't understand how this impacts us, just because it's about transportation funding. I don't necessarily have an issue with it, just wondering if we could get some clarification on that.
So
How does this impact Baldwinsville? Because it's talking about no additional cost for transportation outside voter approved limit. Like, does this even impact us?
I think we're already doing it.
Okay, so no real impact here. Okay, thank you.
I had a couple. One was Resolution 22. Traditionally, that's the one that resolved that the New York State School Board Association supports legislation at the state level that would allow for school board members to receive a stipend for their work as a trustee. I've always looked at this, at least for our school districts. I believe some of the city schools, they do get paid, but for the most part, we don't. And I see it as a public service. I was just wondering what my board colleagues feel about that. I read the rationale, and I understand the perspective that Beacon School District has brought forward, but there is another perspective of making sure that we have people running for the right reasons, and there's no dollar amount that impacts our budget. They say it's not a lot, but I just see that as money that would be going towards our students and our teaching staff to put back into the classroom for our kids. just wondering what people's thoughts are with that, and just looking long-term, what could potentially happen once you open up that door. Who's going to decide what's enough, what's not enough, and is it always going to come back? Is it going to be a set amount? And, if you think about the NISBA Pulse poll they did, the number of hours that board members put in, there's a percentage that do 5 or less hours a week, but then there's the other end where people put in 25 to 30 hours a week. Again, that happens now, but it's hard to make volunteers do anything. But once you start getting paid, is that going to cause issues on a board of who's doing what and balancing out that work? So just want to throw out those initial thoughts.
I just say I'm pretty much in the same camp as Jen. I feel like I'm in my 12th year, so I would support this maybe if they did back pay, but knowing they're not going to do that, I think overall, I think it's a testament to the folks that do run for board, is knowing they're not going to get paid, but still committing the time to it, to me, says they're here for the right reason. So, I do have a challenge of supporting this one in particular, just because I think it, I read through the rationale and I understand some of the topics brought up about, paying for daycare and things like that, people that aren't in a financial position to be able to participate. This may encourage them, but I still think that, where there's a will, there's a way. So I don't necessarily support Resolution 22 as being something I would support, but.
I do understand the access issue when there's very limited representation from Black and brown, members of the community. I think I represent just 7% of all school boards with Latino representation. So, am I saying that I support it? Is there another means where we can support those who might have an interest by providing childcare? And I also think about, those boards that are paid. Are we seeing, positive results in school districts? And is there a link or a connection between that? We've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly across the state, with some boards that are paid. And I don't necessarily support it, nor do I feel we need to get paid, because the expectation is you're drawing from the community on a volunteer basis to support all students in your community. So I don't support this either.
If it was approved, is it something that everyone would have to take, or is it like an optional thing for us to do it or not do it, or?
I'm not sure about that, but let's say it were required to pay all the board members, then I suppose you could always give it back as a donation to the district.
I don't know, I guess I kind of mean more so like if, if someone needs that for childcare or something like that, could they accept that and use it for those reasons, and then, or is it would just be like a stipend at the beginning of the year, everyone gets X amount of dollars?
I think that may be the point of the resolution of, if people were to get paid, they'd have that money to pay the childcare so they could attend the meetings.
Oh.
Right.
Is that what you were getting at? I don't want to.
Well,
I want to make sure I understood what you said.
I'm sort of just saying, and I know you kind of said that they could always give it back as a donation, but I guess just having an option, like, okay, do you need the stipend, yes or no, and then each person could kind of decide individually if they want it or not, or is that wouldn't be how it really works?
I don't think this resolution is getting into the details of how it would be implemented. I don't know if they're advocating for it. Like, all this means is that the New York State School Board Association would support legislation or support topics that may lead to this. Like, we're not voting that, if there's a yes vote at this meeting in a couple of weeks, that all of a sudden anybody's going to get paid.
Right.
It's more they'll support the position as an organization that, board members should get paid, basically, is what you're saying. And
okay. And so, like, if we wanted to implement this, we would have to vote on it for our board and that kind of thing.
I would assume each board would come up with how
their own system. Okay.
So yeah. I would think you'd have 700 potentially different answers to this across the
So that's unclear. So
right.
What we need to decide is whether the issue is, do we support them advocating for legislation for board members to get paid or not, and like, that's it. So all the things that we're discussing about could be discussions later down the road, but this is the first step to even get to those.
And you will have the option at the meeting to, like, normal, in the in-person one, there's 2 mics, like a for and against, and then you can go stand in that line and talk, but you'll probably find that this one will have both sides represented, so if you don't hear anything from what we're talking about here, you could actually chime in and say, you know, you'll introduce yourself and say, you know, our reflection on this was so-and-so, and then the next person speaks. But you can, if you hear things exactly like what we're talking about, then there's, you know, you can choose to speak it or not if you want. That's up to you.
Okay.
And in the end, you'll vote yay or nay.
Right. And then so with this one, is this something collectively we should decide what our vote should be then? Or like how would that work?
So right now there's 6 of us here, and I heard 3 people that don't want to support it. So I guess we need to decide amongst the 6 of us here how we want you to move forward. So
Okay.
I don't know if anyone else has anything else to say to help us determine exactly where the majority of us stand.
I have something to say. I don't know if it's going to help us at all, but I see both sides of it. I certainly see, you know, there's a call to duty. There's there's a certain that knowing you're going in as a volunteer, you know, attracting people who their goal is for service. But I also see I don't want to shut out, you know, somebody who maybe economically can't volunteer, and that stipend might give them that benefit to say, geez, I don't have to take those extra shifts when there's board work, you know, when there's a board meeting or something like that, and I have something that is beneficial to the students in the community as well. So I see that perspective as well, or daycare, or just providing more access. So it's hard. It's hard to say no overall, knowing that, you know, simply because somebody might need the stipend doesn't mean that they don't have the best interests of the students in the district at heart. So I don't know. I was like, I told you, you might not know.
I kind of agree in that sense. Just because we may not use it doesn't mean other communities may need to. So I personally would say I would vote for it.
I mean, in reference to, in lieu of the paying board members, could that money not be given to more boards and districts to use it to support childcare? Paying the stipend, is that permissible?
Not right now. I mean, you need legislative action in order to require districts to do that, and I would assume it would come out of the district's budget.
That's the thing, it does come out of the district budget, so it's a matter of, you know, we have all boards struggle, you know, have this challenge, you know, how much time people, you know, put in. So do we want to support, you know, board members getting paid as coming out of the district budget that the taxpayers are contributing to for, you know, some people maybe put an hour in, some people put 10 hours in, 35 hours. Who's going to say that you're earning your stipend, whatever it may be, and there's no dollar amounts here? Like, who polices that and makes sure that there's no this going on if you're not pulling your weight, which I can see that leading to, you know, as volunteers, it's harder to, we hope that everyone participates and everyone's contributing, but it's harder to say you have to do this when it's a volunteer.
And I think ultimately for me it comes down to there's many, many ways to contribute to the school district. I mean, you can contribute on different schedules, you can contribute in different buildings that your kids think. I mean, board is just one of many, many ways to contribute. So, you know, while there may be a barrier seen as board service, there's plenty of other ways to give back to the district, to the community that don't involve the board. So I think ultimately that's where I stand, where I still feel as a volunteer, it's kind of in the spirit of it. And, you know, if you want to give back to your district, there are other ways to do it. So.
And I think what Jen was saying in regards to, you know, how can you quantify everyone getting the same amount when someone puts in 1 hour a week versus 20 is another valid point too. So maybe I think I changed my mind.
And ultimately,
As I say, this is a tough one because I understand the rationale.
Yeah.
You know, to be inclusive and make sure others are represented, but I guess that's also boards' jobs to make sure that we're getting, people on committees to make sure that there's representation at all levels throughout the district.
And ultimately, we've empowered you, and if you hear, if in the discussion you pick one way or the other, I mean, ultimately, you'll be the voter, so I guess we just support you, whatever. You've heard our concerns and viewpoints, and ultimately, it's gonna be your call.
And that's the hard part, because we don't know what the final will be of this, after the pros and cons are presented. So it's kind of like a judgment call based on what you heard from today. All right, I had another one that I struggled with because it's unclear with the language as to where they're going with this. So, and this is a tough one, and it's an emotional one. And it's a topic that, we've been struggling with in schools for a long time, but it's Resolution 26. 26, yeah. Resolved that the New York State School Boards Association support legislation at the state and or federal level that would reform the current gun laws to strengthen background checks, implementing red flag laws, as well as laws that will restrict guns from those under the age of 21. Now, also farther back in your packet, for Resolution 26, there has been an amendment to that, and all of that language has stayed the same, but Garrison, another school district added on to that, as well as reform gun storage laws by providing for heightened penalties for insecure storage, more stringent firearm storage laws, public awareness programs that can encourage secure storage, and stronger child access prevention. I think all of those things are important. I mean, background checks are happening. I'm not sure if they're happening, across every state, implementing red flag laws. The part that I struggle with is the word "from." I'm not clear as to what they mean by as well as laws that will restrict guns from those under the age of 21. I'm not sure if they're talking about gun purchases or possession, with an adult with you or at all. I'm just not sure where they're going with that, and I guess I'll open it up to everyone else if anyone has any thoughts on that, but I've thought about a lot of different scenarios that we need to consider, and it is an emotional one because there's been a lot of tragic things that have happened, with the most recent one being late spring in our nation. So I'll see if anyone has anything to say first, and then I'll go from there. I'm just concerned with how vague it is.
I agree, Jen. I think it's, first of all, gun is a very wide variety of instruments. So what are we talking about? Are we talking about firearms? Are we talking about handguns? Are we talking about long guns? Are we talking about hunting rifles? Are we, none of that is delineated in here. And then when I read language like every day is an unknown gun event waiting to happen, it's concerning to me the way that's written, that every day is an unknown gun event waiting to happen. So I guess for me, well, I certainly support stringent gun laws because I think there should be laws to ensure that those who have guns are able to handle them effectively to the best we can. I don't know that this is what, personally, I would want the board supporting. Or even that the New York State School Board Association is the place to do so. So that's another issue. That's the first step.
Yeah, that's the first place I went was, is this really a school board association topic? I mean, I understand the safety side of it. I would rather see efforts into education on guns. I mean, I learned to shoot at scout camp. Does that mean, does this comment restrict guns from those under age 21? Like I wouldn't have been able to do that? Like it's just vague enough, and then some of the language in the rationale tells me that, it may be intended to be very, very restricted, which I can't support that. And in this vague setting, I'd love to have a discussion with them and find out where they were really heading with it. And this, I think for Wayne, will be, you guys may be on this one a while, so this might be a very heated one back and forth, depending on where the school district is, but yeah, I think this one kind of oversteps what the New York State School Board Association should be doing. And I'd rather see education and, educating parents and kids and all that stuff, and then let that be something that they choose, but that's my view.
I mean, just some ideas maybe to help, and these are just some that I'm gonna throw out there, and anyone can, jump in just to help Wayne along, because I agree with Jeff, this could be quite a back and forth at the board or at this meeting. Some of the things that I've thought about, first of all, maybe pouring money into SROs, because you can't stop everything for all buildings, and also getting at the root cause. I'm not sure what restricting a gun on the 21st birthday, what's changed from the time you're 20 years old in 264 days. It seems kind of arbitrary, the age, and where they're getting that from. Do all of these tragedies that occur, some of them, it was the parents' guns, it wasn't even the kids' guns. So again, to Jeff's point, the storage and the education on guns. But, there's a lot of good things that would be taken away from people besides their, Second Amendment right. And I'm not really sure where that starts personally regarding this particular issue. But you mentioned guns, the families that hunt. We're talking about school districts in the North Country. My school district had a rifle team. Does that mean those are going to be banned in opportunities for students in different regions of the state to participate? It's an Olympic event. Are we going to take away, someone's, dreams to do that? What about military training for our people who want to go into the armed services? Or when they come home to our home state, is it now illegal for them if they're under the age of 21 to, have target practice and go to the range so they can protect our Second Amendment rights? So I have a lot of different thoughts on this one. And, I'm not sure what you're going to hear, Wayne, or where it's going to go. But it's going to be an interesting one, I think. But it's important. But it's the word "from" and the vagueness that really makes me not want to support it.
I have another one to comment on if we're done with that one. Are we done with that one?
Are we okay with that position? If not, everyone has spoken. I know that was a lot, because everyone kind of looks at this differently. Okay, Jeff, which one do you have?
So the topic of 24 came up. So the tax exemption for veterans, I know probably 5-6 years ago, I want to say roughly, that was kind of brought to us, and each school board got to vote if they wanted to implement something for that. And being at the time, one of only 2 veterans, and now I think I might be the only veteran. But anyway, I felt that, there's many other categories besides being a veteran that could justify maybe a tax exemption. So at the time, I didn't support it just because I felt, we didn't do our service necessarily to get tax benefits or anything. And, ultimately, what that means is if I, as a veteran, get the exemption, everybody else pays a little more, because that dollar value in the budget is the same regardless of whether I get an exemption or not. So for that, I just wanted to point out, we have had that discussion around the table a few times over the last probably 5 years, and I still feel the same, that I don't think, it should be mandated. I think it's a board by board decision, and at the time we chose to do that. So I'm just sharing that view. So I'll be interested to hear what the conversation on that one turns to be. I mean, again, I understand the rationale, but I don't feel like it's worth that by putting more money on everybody else to pay for that. So we get, in my opinion, we get other benefits other places.
So Jeff, I think this is actually saying that we would be reimbursed for it versus having your neighbors pay for it in this resolution.
So I guess ultimately it still comes out of taxes somewhere, but At the time, I believe it was, to spread across.
Correct. So the way it is now, and this kind of discussion came up a little bit last year, and we put some stuff in the weekly letter, and I think it might have been a brief discussion at one of our board meetings, and we chose not to move forward with it anymore. But you are absolutely correct. The way it is right now is exactly how you described it. That reduction, and that's what they're asking for, is a different funding stream. So what I think of when I read this is something similar to the original STAR, where the state reimburses us for those people that have the STAR credit taken off their tax bill versus getting the STAR reimbursement. But you're right, it still comes from someplace.
Yeah.
So with that information, have your thoughts changed, or are you still?
No, I mean, I'm not losing any sleep over it. I think my position hasn't changed, but I'm only one of 6, so I kind of leave that to Wayne to hear the discussion and see where that kind of sways the discussion during that thing. Yeah, I'd be interested to see if, it's obviously then not directly on our taxpayers, but it's still tax money that, in my opinion, could be used elsewhere.
Which here, I'm just gonna throw one more thing in here. I appreciate what you've done and where you stand with this. Another perspective is, it does come from not our local tax base, but it will come from, we all pay state taxes, which will be reimbursed to us. I guess, when it comes to, people from the military, and a lot of them being older and not working anymore and fixed incomes with everything that's going on, is just like that extra boost. I don't know how much they save on a tax bill being, from a veteran. I'm not sure if that, I don't have numbers to say if it's gonna be huge savings, but, people who are like in their 70s or 80s and trying to make ends meet, it's a different thing to consider.
It's up to you, Wayne.
I think we need to give
I'll
Wayne
listen.
direction. That's so unfair.
No, I feel pretty confident that I can listen to dialogue and see, get information that we've discussed here and make a sound decision.
All right, Wayne, on this one, it's up to you.
I'll take it.
All right.
There's just so many of them that are such hot button topics that we could literally sit and talk about each and every one of them. The next one whatever order we're going in, one I was going to bring up was 38. But if we're going in order, if anyone had any objections or thoughts on any of the other ones, feel free to jump in.
I don't think we're going in any particular order. We're going back and forth.
Keep in mind everything, and I'm sure you know this, but everything 33 and beyond are things that NISBA's said they're not going to support, and they're not gonna.
Okay, then good. Cancel that.
So yeah,
Well,
33 and on is,
no.
they're not recommending those to be adopted or supported, so. And they give their little explanation why they don't want to support them underneath.
And I did miss that because for somehow, some way, when I printed these off, page 11 didn't print, which would have been that next page of those for the.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Because certainly at 33 and beyond, they do get a bit more contentious and stuff. And
So just because they're not supported by the resolution committee just draws from, board members just like ourselves to make these decisions, and they have, conversations based on this. And for some of them, they are worded as such, where I imagine the conversation really centered around what the resolution's actually gonna get at. So yes, these are not being recommended. The rationale is there from the school board presenting it, but then there's an explanation of the resolution committee as to why they're not recommending it. But if you go farther in the packet, a lot of these school districts have presented a rebuttal to clarify what they're saying and what they're getting at. So I'm not sure if that changes your thoughts, but you said resolution 38, which has to do with the medical and moral objection that was taken away from our students back in like 2019, I believe. that's no longer an option to attend public school. So I'm not sure where you wanted to go with that, but understand just because it's not being recommended right now, there is a rebuttal, and I'm sure some of these will absolutely come back to the floor, and these will probably, possibly, because these are so contentious, probably the ones that you'll see them spending the most time on, possibly with the back and forth.
Yeah, and I gave you my clarification not to prevent any discussion on them, just so you made sure you realized that there was a break there.
Gotcha, no, and I appreciate that, because I did not see that.
So you brought up 38, was there something?
So it was just more so to get, I guess, opinion on where everyone kind of stood on this, or what their thought process was on this.
My personal opinion is this is an interesting one, because we've had immunizations for a long time that are proven to work, and then we have what they call immunizations or vaccines that don't always work. When it comes to medical exemptions, they've had that in place for a long time, and I'm not sure why that was taken away.
So just to clarify, there medical exemptions, there are still medical exemptions, there's a process.
I'm sorry,
It's
religious exemptions, thank you for correcting me, Joe. I'm not sure why that piece of that was taken away and no longer afforded to families. So those who are immunized technically are protected. Those who are not are the ones who are not protected. So at that point, whose responsibility is it? The parents for those kids who have religious exemptions, or is it the government's? And I guess that's really the debate. And a lot of these actually do have to do with what people perceive as parental rights or are parental rights, whether it's in, the curriculum, healthcare, a bunch of them really, with parental right issues. Where's that line? And some people, obviously these particular school districts feel like that line is getting crossed. And, we'll talk about this one, but there's some other ones that I feel like the NYSBA Resolution Committee completely contradicted themselves, and what's even on the NYSID website. And I agree, because that has been, I'll get to that one, a concern of mine for a while. But let's finish this one first, but they are kind of all connected to that theme of parental rights. And we're not medical doctors, so I know this is a scary one to opine on.
Just out of curiosity, as a district, is this an issue that we had to deal with? I mean,
There were handfuls of families a couple years ago when the religious exemption was taken away that were unable to get medical exemptions for their children to remain here. Some families chose to move out of state, other families chose to homeschool. So there are handfuls of students that were impacted within this district as well as other districts across the state.
I guess it's another one that we'll just kind of have to see where the conversation goes and go from there, unless nobody has any other feedback.
You have some challenging ones to listen to this year. There's no question about it. It's quite a way to, break it in, but I think that you're going to represent us well and really fairly listen to the debate that's on the floor with these, because these are challenging.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's going to be good information.
I personally would like to see that brought back to the families who hold those real beliefs, because I feel like, that I'm sure they're making do, but it would be nice to have them back, in our buildings if they're homeschooled right now in our community. And I do know families who literally did move out of state over that a few years ago. Don't hear major issues in other parts of the state or other parts of the country that still have that exemption in place. I don't see any tragic things happening.
I'll be interested to hear on Resolution 25 what the discussion is there. That's the mandate of all electric busing and infrastructure and getting reimbursed for that. I mean, that's quite a unfunded mandate at this point. So I support that one for sure. I mean, again, we go back to where do we want to spend our tax dollars. I would much rather see it going into that if that's going to be an unfunded mandate. It'll be interesting to see what happens by, 2035? So I understand why they're trying to do that, but boy, that's a huge jump for our, knowing that what buses are 4x the cost, and now when you got 100 of them, I mean, that's a huge uphill challenge.
This one's scary. I agree with this one. Just the whole idea of going all electric with buses and cars kind of frankly scares me, especially after what happened in Florida when you see a natural disaster and you have to wait for your car to charge to get anywhere. Think about, fires in California where you have to flee. I mean, I think that this whole idea is dangerous, but they're putting it on schools first to lead the way with the mandates in New York State. There's a lot, but for this particular resolution, I'm for it. Sure. So there are a couple that were not recommended for moving forward, and I guess I kind of need. There's two of them in particular. Resolution 36 and 40 just have to do with curriculum and the difference between curriculum and standards, and who has each role. And, I do see the school district's concerns with this, who presented these resolutions. First of all, the resolution committee on number 36 completely contradicted what's on the NYSERD website, but we have to remember why school boards actually exist, and it's to make the closer you are to a problem or the people, you're in the best position to serve those people. And school boards were supposed to help direct, figure out the needs of the community and the students. But at the same time, I understand from the state ed, making sure all students are able to get, something similar. My struggle with this is, state ed is supposed to set the standards in both of these, and the locality determines the curriculum, our professional staff here. So I don't know where that's going to go, where people feel, but I guess right now, these particular school districts are worried about an overreach and how far it's going to go. And some of this may be brought about because of COVID. We have more families engaged in education. They're more aware of what's going on, they have more questions. I see that as a good thing. I'm not saying either way what way to go, but I do have a problem with the rationale given by the resolution committee for sure.
And you said, so it's for 36 and 40 is kind of what those thoughts?
They're loosely connected, yeah.
Okay.
They're both around curriculum. One specifically is about the comprehensive sexual education for K through 12. That is in the education committee in Albany right now, and they do recognize that, the committees recognize that our position, NYSBA's position, is to oppose any legislative curriculum mandates, but that doesn't mean SED can't just, do that on their own, because they are afforded the ability to do that. And 36 had to do more specifically. I think that one was more generic. I mean, there are some curriculum ones on here that I don't agree with, because I feel like it's not allowing for progress and having education deal with the changes that we're seeing. 36 had to do with requiring school districts to implement curriculum regarding matters not pertaining to standard academic subjects. And there is a rebuttal for that, just more on roles. I'm not sure in this one what the standard academic subjects are. Does that mean just our core and we're eliminating our encore classes? I don't know. I think, again, that's a very vague resolution to begin with. But I don't even know, where we stand in understanding the differences between standards and curriculum and whose role is what. But I don't want to beat that one. I don't know. But that could be a potential big one with where those lines are. And 37 has to do with parental rights, and 38 is loosely tied to parental rights. They did point out that viewing curriculum, there's already law in place for parents to have the ability to do that. But there's some serious parental right issues out there right now. We've seen it in other states. And I think the fear is that, with certain topics, I feel badly for the teachers and the administrators because they're legislatively being forced to not be honest with the parents on particular topics. And I think that's a slippery slope to go down. The parents shouldn't be the last to know about concerns or issues that the children are having. I see school districts as, they're the safe place to speak to, but they should be opening up those doors for conversations. For a parent not to know, who their child is or how they identify, I'd be devastated as a parent to be the last to know. But I see the other side that, students are afraid to share that. But just legislatively, I think it puts our staff in a very bad position. And that's just one topic. I just think that particular one is very unethical because it's causing them to lie by omission, or if they're point blank asked, they can't even answer the question. Otherwise there's repercussions to that affect their profession. Some of these, I respect the school boards for bringing these forward. For sure. And based on the silence, I don't know where those are going to go either. I'm not sure where the board stands because these are some really tough ones to ponder. Very tough.
I will say, normally, most of the attention is on the ones in the beginning there, the first section. But I will say, you probably got the most contentious list I've ever seen in my 12 years.
Good year to be involved.
Does anyone have anything else? Wayne, if you need to come back or listen to the video or the audio or talk, and make sure you have all those set, because that was a lot of different things tossed out there for you to use or not use, depending on how the conversation goes. We look forward to you hopefully making it to the meeting so you can tell us how it went that evening, but Shelley arrived very late last year. Yeah. Right. And the other topic on here was Meet the Candidates Night, and just want to just give everyone an update. Jeff, did you get signed up for Board Officers Academy or the forum yet, or did you not get a chance to do that? It used to be President's Forum for NISBA, and they opened. What? Okay, so there's a Board Officers Forum, and I posted the question that came up at the last board meeting about, how do schools handle Meet the Candidates Night, what format. I know Jason reached out to his colleagues and we got that information. You reached out to all the OCM superintendents, and there was some variety, but those who have the district, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, those school districts where the district does it, they do it how we do it. It's not controversial. There's districts that have other organizations do it, and I sent you that link from a school in Dwaynesburg who, you know, it was so professionally done. Some of the discussion that we had at the last meeting, you know, about worrying about debates and stuff, there was none of that. It was phenomenal. Questions were submitted from the community. The PTA hosted it, but an outside organization actually conducted the whole thing. They're the ones that promoted it. And there was another school district that did respond, and they didn't have a PTA do it. It was another organization in town that did it. I think it was like some music association or something. So then we talked about it in agenda planning, and this idea initially started from the district PTA committee years ago. So Jason's having a meeting this week or next week. I don't remember. Oh, I never did upcoming meetings, did I?
It's next week.
Okay, I apologize because I missed the upcoming meetings. But he is having a meeting and he's gonna see what their thoughts are on it and then bring it back to us. But for now, I feel bad because I know you guys were looking for a date for the budget hearing, Meet the Candidates Night, if we're gonna have it. But I think we kind of need to hold it to the next meeting after you get some feedback from that group. And then another item that took some time last meeting was board goals. I did get a legal opinion. I'm sorry.
Just to clarify, we're now going to go to the PTA to get additional feedback about how the board, no, just please clarify, please.
We can have, first, it's not the board's event, it's the district's event, technically.
Okay.
So, legal opinion was you need to be careful as to how you run it. We can continue to run it the way we want, or we can have the district see if there's any other organizations, no matter what it is, any organization could do it. I mean, this is true even before, you know, we've done it the way we've done it for the last bunch of years. If there's anyone else who has an interest of hosting it and doing all of that footwork, the district's completely out of it. You know, finding their own moderator, you know, their own system for doing it, communicating it out. Good question though, because that did get confusing. And then board goals. We talked about that, got a legal opinion. I shared with you at Board Officers Academy. They contradicted themselves with that, so I decided to go to Colleen and I shared that opinion with you. We are having a data retreat on October 10th, so we're going to use that time to decide whether we even want to do board goals or not. And if we do, we had the self-evaluation done, we've had some conversations. There were some other additional ideas that came out of Board Officers Academy for types of goals that we actually kind of have started already. So we can have that conversation then and then report back out at the board meeting, you know, whether we're going to do board goals or not, and if we are, what they are, to kind of wrap up that conversation from last time. And last thing, we have our retreat in November, and we need to start thinking about who we want to see if they're available. We've talked about, we had Derek Dorsey at one time. Last meeting I talked about David Freud. There's also NISBA does their custom board retreats. I'm not sure if any of you have time to think about it, but after some of the things that, you know, we've been dealing with and seeing, and with Derek working with our district, it may be a good idea to bring Derek back, but I'd like to solicit input as to what direction we'd like to go with him. And if hopefully he's available as well for the date that we've agreed that we want to work together to move us forward. So does anyone, go ahead.
I don't need to backtrack. With the Meet the Candidate Night and the budget hearing and the board meeting right now being scheduled on one night, correct?
I think it'll depend if the district still does it anymore and we, in the format.
I mean, right now that's the schedule.
That is how it's scheduled right now,
Currently, yes.
correct?
You're
Okay.
right.
So, can we decide to keep those on one night and how we're going, and how that format is gonna go moving forward? Or do we have to wait and decide if or how the district's gonna move forward with Meet the Candidate Night?
So we don't know who's gonna host it, so the format may be different. And if another group is doing it, we don't want the perception, if there's questions being asked, that it's a district-run event.
Or did the board agree that it was going to be a different format?
It's not our decision because the district hosts it.
Is the district decided that it is going to be a different
No,
format?
I mean, we recommended, I'm the tenured one here, so I'll say it. We recommended the same process that we've utilized in the past on the date that is listed on the drafted calendar. That's what we proposed to the board. Based on conversation in the last couple of meetings, that there was different input from the board, but from the
I need
cabinet's
to do a
perspective,
correction here. I need to do a
that's
correction.
where we stand.
I need to do a correction. So the calendar came out and I noticed on the calendar that the budget vote was scheduled for a Wednesday. And budget votes don't take place on a Wednesday. It was an oversight, a day or a date or a day of the week wasn't changed. And then Meet the Candidates Night was scheduled for a week prior to that, just like it always is. So I contacted them and said that this is a mistake, this needs to be changed to the Tuesday as a budget vote and gave them the date, and Meet the Candidates Night is the week before to abide by the laws when the presentation also needs to be done by. So somewhere after that, it was decided that it was all gonna come together at a board meeting, the budget hearing, Meet the Candidates Night, and a regular board meeting on the same night, but that conversation didn't come here. So, but that unfortunately got out onto the district calendar. So we're kind of working backwards here, trying to figure out, you know, with everything that's been going on, what is the best way to do this? Because the conversation really started because we really don't want to have all that on the same night. And that was Jason's initial question when it came to the board publicly after all of that happened.
So what I heard though was, this is a district thing, so I guess why wouldn't we just be waiting for Jason to tell us what they're doing at that time frame? If we're out of what the format is and whether we're having one or not, because it's a district thing, not a board thing, wouldn't we just wait for Jason's input and say,
Well, the district can certainly continue to do it, but other organizations can also do it and do it their format. So
wouldn't we just wait for Jason to tell us what they're doing, whether they're
Because-
doing it or having it?
If I may
I'm just confused now. If this is
So-
a board thing.
No, the legal advice was to us not to host it, right? It should be an outside entity if the board chooses to change the format.
but it's not the board's event. It never was intended to be a board's event when this first came up. So I think that's where the sticking point is. So the board really doesn't decide in the end. So you guys can continue to do it the way you're doing it and the format. And, you know, some PTA members from years ago did hear the last board meeting and do have an interest in that, in, you know, going back to the work that they already began before it was taken from them.
But can we just be told next board meeting what you guys are doing? Because this is like our third board meeting, and I feel like we're nowhere farther than we were the first one. So can we just be told what you guys are doing?
Okay, I need to stop you because you had that conversation with us in agenda planning as to what we agreed upon would be okay for Jason to do. So I don't want to give him mixed messages from agenda planning to now.
But maybe my fault, but I'm hearing this isn't a board thing. So if it's not a board thing, this is already our third board meeting talking about it. It just seems like we're just waiting on input from them. I'm good with progressing that way and just let us know what you guys plan to do. I mean, we've had legal opinions, we've had multiple discussions at board. I'm just good with, just tell us what we're moving forward with so we can get the calendar updated. I'm good with that, so.
going back to November, if we're done with that, I don't know.
Yes, I just want to move forward, and I'm sorry. I know there were issues about a delay because of the decision, and I think there was confusion. I just want to move this forward and just get it done. If it's not a board thing at this point, just make your decision and that's what we'll do. So I don't know if that helps. It just, it's not within our realm. It's not within the scope of our responsibilities, correct? So,
The district's required to hold a public hearing. That's what we're required to do. And it has to be 7 to 14 days before the budget vote. So what's proposed, or what we put in the calendar, is within those guidelines.
So the issue, when they all ended up on the same date, some years we have 3 candidates, some years we have 9, who knows what we're gonna have, and, are they going, if the district decides to keep that format, do we wanna have that type of evening? Because obviously we're all gonna be there because there's the budget hearing, and there's 3 people every year who are up for, re-election, so if the community's here listening to this, and the board members who are running, who are up every single year, there's 3, they're not gonna be able to field any questions because we have to come up and perform our duties because there's a scheduled board meeting. So I feel like every year there's gonna be 3 current sitting board members who, if they choose to run, they're not getting that opportunity like all the new candidates who like to have our seats. So that's my issue regardless of what format, that they're even on the same night to begin with.
I guess, if I could, what Jeff is saying is it's not a board issue, so why are we continuing to discuss it?
Because right now they're both scheduled on the same night, so I guess our decision would be, how do we feel, and do the district have consideration for the disadvantage possibly that 3 of their people sitting here may not be afforded the same opportunity to meet the candidates night because we have to do our board business regardless.
But this isn't board business.
The calendar is, or when are we as a board going to have the budget hearing for the community?
We already approved the calendar, correct? Or actually,
We didn't approve the calendar for the budget hearing. That was on a document.
it was proposed to us.
It was proposed to us, and I identified the errors on it, and a decision was made. And did not know it was made for other events to be on a board meeting night until it was on the calendar. Yes.
But we did approve a calendar on July 11th or whatever day that was. Right?
I believe that's just for regular board meetings.
Yeah.
Right, so we have a regular board meeting scheduled the same night as the district has, meet the candidates night and the budget hearing on there.
I understand that. So it's up to them.
So we get the calendar in the Friday letter with all the board meetings, all of the dates of the retreats, when the public hearing is, when the budget vote is, when meet the candidates night is, but we don't approve that officially. At the reorg meeting, we just approve the actual regular meeting dates.
So the way that it's on the calendar right now, we would have meet the candidate night, then do the budget hearing, and then move to the meeting, correct?
Correct. And a correction can absolutely be made.
Just to clarify, do the incumbents also have an opportunity to speak at board candidate night? Okay, just.
It's exactly how it's, yeah.
So everybody would have a chance to speak, correct?
everyone would have a chance to speak, but as, you know, following up on the discussion around the board table last time, people threw out different ideas and statements were made that, well, after the meeting, why do we have to have questions after the meeting? Individuals can come up to us. That's true, but there are some people who have a responsibility to start the board meeting at 7 who wouldn't have that opportunity, and it would impact everyone at this table when their term came up in the future.
Can we just delay the start of the board meeting? Yeah, we can do whatever we want with the board meeting time.
So right now, I will definitely be going back to the PTA parents who started this, which is fine. The board or the district can decide to do what they want. I guess I'm at a loss, you know, the last couple meetings about the issue with having something professionally done that's more informative to our constituents who vote for us to be here, to know where we stand. And if any of you took the time, and I don't know if you did, because I know people are limited on time, the video that Dwaynesburg did, they got at some meaty things, and it is tough and it is uncomfortable, but to have a seat at the board table, you have to be comfortable with the idea of being uncomfortable for any progress to be made. So I'm not sure if the issue is the district's doing it, the PTA is doing it, or some other organization. If the issue is that we don't want to field questions and have people judge us and determine whether we want to be here or not. I'm really not sure what the issue is or what the fear is, but we can't fear as a board. I mean, we're going to have challenges and we're going to be asked hard questions potentially, but if we can't handle them there, how are we going to handle them when real issues actually do pop up?
I don't know how we ended up here, but I don't think anybody on this board said they were fearful of having it being questioned. I think we're just trying to figure out what's the right night to do it. And if we, so where that line came from, I don't know. I don't think one person here advocated for not doing it. I think we're just saying, Jason, tell us when it is and what the format is. That's all we're saying. Not one person stood up here and said, we're afraid to take questions, we're afraid to have people question us. So why that's being thrown out there right now for the public is
So we have two issues.
concerning.
We have the date, we have the date issue, we have the format issue, and we have who's gonna host the issue. So all three are getting blended in or wrapped up into one.
So you'll get back to us on that, Jason?
Yes, sir.
Does anyone else have anything else for agenda or for board roundtable? Item 11, resolve that the Board of Education enter into the executive session to discuss the employment history of a particular person or corporation, or the medical, financial, or credit history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. Can I have a motion, please? Jeff first. Second, Wayne. All in favor? Opposed? Passes 6-0.